beautiful city of Bruges in Belgium. And when you come to Belgium at this time of the year, for the majority of the people who come here, they've come for one thing, and that's to see the start and the day out on the Tour of Flanders. This to the Belgians is the biggest single-day race in the world, and to many of the riders too. It draws the best field possible, and it is an interesting course. By the end of the day, of course, we've visited all of the hills of Flanders. But before the start, you have the biggest crowd. The enthusiasm here is absolutely second to none. And the Belgian people know their riders. They'll chant the names they want to see. They'll recognise it without checking their numbers first. This is without doubt the biggest crowd at the start of a one-day classic race anywhere in the world. Today the race is a tad under 270 kilometres, and the organisers have added for the first time a few extra kilometres of cobblestones, 2.5 to be exact, so there's now more than 20 kilometres of cobbles in this race. The riders, of course, though, fear the narrow hills, where they know if they don't get there first, then they're in for a very rough ride indeed. Well, who's going to win? The Belgians will tell you, Johan Museeuw or Peter van Petegem. The riders, of course, have other opinions, and Paul Sherwen in the start area this morning talking to some of them.
Georgie, it's cold again. The beginning of the season, the races that you like.
Yeah, no, I trained real hard for these races this winter. Had a little bit of bad luck last week. I bruised some ribs in 3 days to Pana, but if I could deal with the pain, I don't think it's going to affect my riding. It's just some pain that I have to deal with. But hopefully, I'll have a good race today.
This race is a bit of madness towards the end, though, because it's just a question of survival. You don't need any teammates. You've just got to try and stay at the front on your own.
Yeah, definitely. Towards the end, it's definitely a race of attrition, and you got to try to conserve as much as possible in the beginning. There's a lot of battling for positioning. The early sections, the early climbs. Trick is to try not to spend too much energy battling for those climbs and have it at the end.
Who's your big favorite today? Who's the man you think you're going to watch?
Well, there's several guys. There's Schmiel, Museeuw, Weinsteins. But I think Postal Service has got a strong squad with myself and Ekimov and Frankie. So we're not afraid of anybody today, and we want to try to do a good race today.
We need lights. It's Belgium. It's always sunny here.
Awesome. Frank, it's good to see you again, but looks like you didn't have much time to shave.
Oh, I decided I wasn't shaving for the whole week. All I've been doing is laying in bed for the last 5 days because I had a bad crash in Dapana and hurt my shoulder, and just been trying to accelerate time in nature and trying to get it better, but I don't know how it's going to be.
I was surprised actually to see you on the starting list this morning because I did hear that you had a very bad crash this week, but it's important for a man like you to be part of the team going into the Tour of Flanders.
Well, I told him that I would start and see how it goes, and if anything, I'd try to do what I can in the first 100K before we hit the cobbles if I don't feel well. Otherwise, if I feel okay, just kind of go kilometer by kilometer to try to help everybody. But I thought it's an important race, so I thought it was important that I could try to do what I can to help everybody, and if I feel good, then hopefully I can make it up there also.
But George has also had a pretty tough week as well because he's been involved in a crash, but the team must be on a high with that win by Yaroslav Ekimov.
Yeah, it was great that Eki won, so it's good motivation for the whole team. We definitely have a leader there. George is riding really well too, but he had a crash and bruised up his ribs, and so there's a question mark there also. So, you're not going to know anything until the second half of the race and see how everybody's feeling and who's in the front.
These are tough races, aren't they?
These are the toughest. It doesn't get any harder. This is one of the hardest races to finish, and to do well and be in the front, it's like very, very hard. All right, thanks.
Well, Peter, last year was the big win at the Tour of Flanders. This year must be a little bit different starting with number one.
Every year is another race, eh? So, but the number one, was last year, and this year we're going to try again to win this race.
It's always the same at the end of the Tour of Flanders, though. It's a question of survival. You have to hope that you don't have bad luck because the race splits up completely.
Yeah, it's when the condition is good and you have no flat tire or crashes, then I can go long. And I hope at the end we will do something.
At the Tour of Flanders, we always talk about the same names: Van Petegem, Schmiel, Museeuw. Anybody else you'll be worried about today?
Well, there are a few riders like Feinstein, Baldato, Sørensen. They can long go in, and also a few riders from Cofidis. They're good. So.
But you feel happy when you get into the Flemish roads?
When I'm in the front with a small group.
Good luck.
Okay.
Well, it's all calm before the storm here, but it's really difficult these days trying to actually get in to talk to the guys because it's so cold at the start here in the Tour of Flanders that they all want to lock themselves into the cars and come out really at the very last minute, which is why we spend 45 minutes running around this compound trying to find people to talk to. And, you know, all the interviews we do get, they always end up being in the last 5 minutes.
We moeten nog een bezig. Alleen deze kant.
How are you?
Yeah, how are you? Good.
Is that your little baby there?
Yeah.
Very nice. How old?
6.5 months. Yeah, morning. Good.
Form's good.
Yeah, I think so. Just I need a little bit of luck today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone has some luck in this race. You know?
Yeah. Just so good.
How's Zabel? You motivated?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
Good legs. So just when I have the chance to come together in the final.
Yeah. It's a group of 8 or 9. He's got a big chance, eh?
Yeah, but the last year was 3 or 2 in the front,
Yeah.
and then a big group.
Yeah. Just see. Just have a look. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
See you later.
See you.
Yaroslav, you're back on US Postal Service and a great win already this week in the 3 days of La Panna.
Yeah, I'm I'm happy to be first. I'm happy to be in the United States Postal Pro Cycling team, and so much happier to win, like to make a big first win and of the team. And I hope it's not the last one in this year for all of us. And I think we're going to do well this year.
The team seems to have pretty good morale, and you've got Frankie Andrea to work for you a little bit earlier on, and George Hincapie may well be up alongside you towards the end.
Yeah, we should. I think we should stick together with George and watch the final and see what's happened there and try to figure out the tactic and the last Gerasberg and Bosberg, all those climbs.
At the end, though, it's a question of survival, isn't it? You have to just keep up at the front and keep out of danger.
Yeah, for sure. It must be. I mean, it must be choice between us. If we are both in the final, the job must be done for somebody from us. So if George feels good, I help him in the sprint, and if I have a chance to escape somewhere, I'll do that.
Good luck. Bye. Yeah, Rolf, this is a race that we always like to talk to you at the start because you give us a good insight on how Tour of Flanders is operated. It's always a difficult race to understand towards the end.
Well, I think it's one of the classics. You have a few points in the race that you absolutely have to be there, and the rest in the final. I can tell you 9 names, and 8 will be there today. So there's not so much changes in it, and it's really the tough, hard guys who are back in the final. And maybe there's a new guy that you don't know, but I would say 1. But no, there's nothing. There's no wonders here. It's really a tough race, and you have to know the race, and you have to be able to ride uphill, downhill, in the wind, in the rain, everything.
But that's the crazy thing about Flanders too. You've got those strategic points, and it's almost a war to be in the first 10.
Yeah, you have some strategic points, and if you are not in the first at least 30, 40 riders, then your race could be finished. I mean, you don't win them always there, the races, but you can really lose them. You can really lose the race, and even after 100 kilometers, if you are in the back of the bunch and with crashes and punctures and stuff like that, it costs too much to come back, and in the end you don't have the
start of this season. You had a bad crash, and you're starting to get back again. How's your chances for today, or is it really just to help the team?
No, I'm here. Like I said, if I start at least on 95%. So, of course, I have to see during the race how my leg is. I had a bad crash Wednesday, and I've had a few accidents this year. I broke my collarbone the 1st of January and had a bad crash in Mediterranean Sea. But I've been riding really up to my top level. Sunday in Brabantse-Pijl, I was 3rd behind Musev. So I'm confident with my condition. I'm only concerned about my injury. So
Good luck.
Thank you.
Eric, a great win in Milan-San Remo, but people now think you might have a chance to win Tour of Flanders today.
Oh, who thinks this?
Walter Godefroot, your team manager?
I know, but I'm happy when I finish today in a top 10, and I think it's really good for me. And all the other years I ride 7 times before Tour of Flanders, and I think my best was the 20th place. I have many results in the 20s, but on a Muur of Gerardsbergen, I'm not strong enough in the last years to follow the champions, but maybe this year.
But last year you were very close to the front with the champions and you fell off on the Muur de Grammont. That must have been quite a sad moment.
Yeah, I lose after 250 k's the power to climb up there, and so I'm riding like a bike tourist there, but I was powerless there.
Well, good luck today.
Thanks.
Johan, it's good to see you this morning. This is a race that we always enjoy because it's a race where you're nearly always in the front.
Yes, 7 times in the 3 position. So I went 3 times, two times second, and 2 times third. So I hope today to do the same.
It's always important in the Tour of Flanders to have a strong team, and Mappé, when you look at the team of Mappé, every one of those riders can be in the top 10 at the end.
We are strong, but not so strong than other years, because the last 14 days we have a lot of sick riders. And Bartoli has broke his knee last year, so he is not 100%. But we are strong, but not so strong as other years.
Strong boy. The Belgian Sean Yates. Wilfred, I'm going to have to leave you now. The bell just went, but it's going to be a hard day for you working for Johan Museeuw.
Yeah, it's a good day today. Is the Tour of Flanders, and it's very important for us.
Good luck. I know it's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, thank you.
This is what it's all about. At the back of the main field, everybody's rolling out of the town square here in Brugge, and they're going to face 268 kilometers. Going to be a tough day, but the guys we're seeing at the back now will certainly not be at the back when we get to the front. Men like Johan Museeuw, men like André Schmeel, those are the big names that we always talk about when we come here to the Tour of Flanders. And once again, it's going to be a great bike race.
And we join the race, as you can see, just on 150 kilometres still to ride in the Tour of Flanders, and the main field is making its way through these narrow roads as it now starts to enter the area of the big test of this race. 16 climbs in all throughout the day, the vast majority of them though coming towards the end as we go deep into the Flanders countryside.
Well, this race has changed a lot over the last few years, Phil, and in fact the last 60 kilometres is when the riders have almost a climb every 5 or 6 kilometres. We're now coming into Meulen, and you can see that the urgency in the main field, all wanting to be in the first 15, 20 places, because these roads here of the Tour of Flanders are exceptionally narrow.
Well, good tempo riding at the front, holding their positions before the narrow roads become cobbled and very, very steep. The weather conditions are good. Just a hint of rain this morning. The long journey out to the coast of Belgium. We're now making our return down towards the hillside of Flanders. Farm Friets, always near the head of the peloton today. A new team on the block, having taken over the sponsorship of the old TVM team. Now a sample of the cobblestones as the riders come through Meulen.
Amazing. Over the last couple of years, Tour of Flanders has got almost as many cobblestones as Paris-Roubaix these days, and there are some pretty bad cobblestone sections here in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. They've got through that one pretty easily, but Farm Friets, Phil, very early on in this bike race have decided they're going to be the dominant factor, and they reckon that their man Peter van Petegem, who won this bike race last year, has got a good chance of winning 2 in a row.
Also on their team and finding his form at the moment is Sergei Ivanov, the Russian national champion. We were out with him on the Tour of Flanders, where he started favourite for that race, but found a very lively American Mercury Racing team indeed, and victory going there to Chris Horner. Wonderful victory for the man, making his return from Europe back onto the French squads. Heading up to Den Ast, and that is the gradient there. It's only a little climb, Paul, of 20 metres.
It's only a small climb, and you can see we've still got the early leaders still off the front. The time gap, 8 minutes and 11 seconds to the guys who went out on the habitual early morning breakaway here at the Ronde van Vlaanderen. Hoover is up there, as well as Eric de Klerk. But I have to tell you one thing, once we get to the repetitive climbs a little later on, that gap is going to tumble quite dramatically.
Well, our cameras, which are by courtesy of Belgian television, and almost a clash of wheels there, staying with the peloton. But we do have those two leaders, Wesley Hoevara and Eric de Klerk. Flandern 2002 for Hoevara, and the other team, Eric de Klerk, coming from the Cofidis squad.
It's just a small climb here, 7%, and you can see the field already strung out quite a lot. But it's later on, I think, the race really begins, Phil, when we get to the Old Quaremont, because then after the Old Quaremont, you have a repetitive number of climbs coming very, very close together. You've got the Quaremont, the Tyenberg, and the Patersberg, and that really is when this field will split to pieces.
No sign of the big stars yet. I said Cofidis there, but I meant, of course, the Kohlstrup team. Two of the small teams in the race, sending their men away early to grab a little bit of publicity, but we're not seeing too much of them. Everybody believes this is where the winner will come from, and of course they're absolutely right. That gap now beginning to come down. At one stage it was well into double figures. It's now around about 8 minutes for the two leaders. I'm sure we'll see them shortly. 137 kilometres still to race here. That's about 85 miles still to be covered. And nobody anxious yet, because they know, don't they, Paul? Now they've come out and survived what weren't too severe, the crosswinds today. The race is always decided on these narrow roads. It's all a matter of holding your position at the moment.
Well, if the group in front had been 5 or 6 riders, there'd be a little bit more panic in the main field here, but they realise, having two guys alone, and we're now joining the two leaders, they realise that it would be so much easier to actually pull them back. In recent years, we've seen big breaks going off the front of 10 or 15 riders, and that's when there's been a major panic. But at the moment, you can see the man who's really moving away from everybody else here, wearing number 233, is the Kohlstrup rider. That's Eric de Klerk. He's on the Achterberg. The Achterberg is 18% at the bottom part. It's only a 1 kilometre climb, and climbs up to 76 metres, which is only around 200 feet above sea level. He's coming out of the top of it now onto the main road, and not too clever a move really to try and blow away his compatriot in the leading group now, because they've got so far to go, Phil. They should try and just keep together and work as long as they can at the front of the bike race.
It's only the third time the Flanders has used that little climb of Achterberg, and it looks as though it's actually given de Klerk an advantage, as he's managed to rid himself of his teammate. The distance now beginning to bite into the legs of these young professional riders, and now making this is Hoevara here, and he is left behind. So once the splitters come, I think the rot has started to set in now. Wonderful atmosphere throughout the day here in the Tour of Flanders. It's one event really, if you ever get the chance to come and watch, you should. You can see it a lot out on the course because of the way it zigzags around Flanders, but you can see by the crowds here, I think of all the nations in the world, the Belgians in Flanders do know their cycling and do really make you feel part of the scene. These guys are absolute heroes today because of the long breakaway. And they're very knowledgeable, the Belgians, aren't they, Paul?
They certainly are. They know their bike racing, and they know their country as well, because the great thing about the Tour of Flanders is the roads are so small, and they repeat and crisscross all over the small hills in this part of the Belgian countryside. In fact, you can get out to see the bike race 6 or 7 times, and it seems to me over the last couple of years that the biggest followers of these bike races now are actually on motorbikes, so they can get through the little lanes to get up to the front and see the bike race once again.
Well, the lead is on the Wolfenberg. Again, a fairly new climb in Flanders, only used last year for the first time. There's the split, and it goes back to 6 3/4 minutes to the bunch. But I think more or less the tempo of the bunch is simply closing down on the leaders without a big effort now, because they have split. And as we start to bite into these hills, we're going to see a lot of changes here. 1 or 2 riders going around those cones, which don't seem to be too strategically placed, but I think there's a little traffic island there, and they're there to warn the riders about it.
Just going now through the streets of Oudenaarde, And again, this cobblestone section here is not actually indicated on the race route, but there are so many cobble streets in Belgium, in the small towns around here, that it's a lot of incidences when you see the riders actually trying to get onto the pavement to get a slightly smoother ride. But coming up pretty shortly, in around about 5 or 6 kilometres, is going to be the next section of cobblestones, and that's going to be at Marta, and that's when the hammer is really going to be down. This is the main field now, coming over the Achterberg, and they're still feel more than 6 minutes behind, but as we get to the next section of Kobbelsberg at Marta and head down towards the Old Quaremont, then the main field is just going to eat away at that advantage of the two leaders.
Well, one rider a little bit anxious to start the action rolling, and in fact he's now being joined by the rest of the group here as he starts to move clear. This is Jackie Durand, of course, the Lotto man this year. And what a marvellous rider he is. Always the opportunist, always looking for the breakaway, almost inviting the riders here to come and join him because he wants to get on with the race.
Well, actually, Jackie Durand almost not making it into the Lotto squad this week because Jos Brackerveld, the team manager there, had some pretty nasty things to say about him. Felt he was overpaid and he wasn't riding to form. And you can see here, it looks to me as if he's actually trying to stir something up in the main field at the moment, looking over his shoulder all of the time to see if he's getting a small splinter group off the front.
Well, that's his plan, because we're on a climb number 2 here, remember, of 16, and this time Jackie is trying to tempt somebody to come and get a move underway, setting himself a huge target here after only 138 kilometres covered. But Jackie is used to long breakaways and successful ones at that, former wearer too of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. Nobody coming up to him yet. You can see him climbing just ahead. I think he's got a couple of teammates right on the head of the peloton as well, trying to back them off maybe and give Jackie a little lead over the top of the Achterberg. This is an asphalt climb, nice surface, as we go under the yellow flags of Flanders. That's the local flag here in Belgium, and I think he could well have a couple of teammates with him over the top.
Well, Jackie Durand, certainly a former winner of this bike race as well, in a very long breakaway situation. But I reckon today he's got a little bit more responsibility on his shoulders. He's obviously got the freedom to try and get into a small breakaway, but they do have Andre Schmiel in the squad. Schmiel is regarded today as the #1 leader of this team, and he will be trying to make sure that he's to the front when we get to the more critical part of the race, which I always regard as being the last 60 kilometres of the Tour of Flanders, when you have that incredible repetitive nature of all of these climbs coming one after the other in quick succession.
Now there's Jackie over the top of the Achterberg, but the two leaders, although they're no longer together, over the top of the Wolvenberg, which is 4 kilometres ahead, and that just about covers the time gap now at around about 6 minutes. But the way the tempo is coming now, Jackie just sitting here, Paul, setting the pace. He hasn't got away, yet he's not looking round and saying it's somebody else's turn. He's just getting on with the job.
He's hoping, I think, that there'll be a slight split over one of these early little climbs and he can fraction off about, 20 or 30 riders and get a small group. But that's not going to be the situation here, because everybody's still very attentive at this part of the game. We're still all, around about 80 miles to go to the finish, so nobody really is going to sit up and let the wheels go.
A view down from our helicopters, the main peloton comes over the top of the climb, still under the guard of the Lotto boys, as we now descend, a 7% descent here, and on the right of the screen there, approximately 32 miles an hour, and braking furiously, I would think, for that sharp right-hand bend. It looks as though the Palmans team has now put themselves on the front. That looks very much like Scott Sunderland.
Yeah, Scott Sunderland, another rider very lucky to be here at the Tour of Flanders. Sunderland, really an unlucky bike rider, because he's had some awful crashes over the years, and in fact this year he had another pretty bad crash early on in the season. And talking to him before the start this morning, he was quite happy to be on the start line of the Tour of Flanders, but didn't have any ambitions for getting towards the finish. He felt that his job today would be just to help his teammates.
Well, let's hope he comes good again. Scotty had a good start to the new year, because in Australia, where he was training, had his wife Sabine and family out there as well. He got second in the National Road Racing Championships, and that was a good result for him. It was a tough race that day. A lot of big riders failed to finish it in Aussie. And then, as Paul said, he had that little bit of a prang, and now he's having to work his way back onto the big time again.
Well, everybody's very energetic on these early part. There's a problem at the back here. Somebody's got a chain off at the moment there, but this is the big problem as well, Phil, about the Tour of Flanders. The roads are so narrow that even when the referees do give a call for an incident like that, the team managers actually can't get by, because the roads are just about wide enough for just one car.
Well, that's one of the reasons why they've taken out some of the climbs in recent years, because they've become too narrow for modern day cycling. But there you are, there's talk of them putting one or two of them back in next year, because they've lost some of the famous icons of the Tour of Flanders, and I think we're going to see them coming back in, like the old Quadamont.
There's a big rumour as well they're going to put the Koppenberg back in, and that's quite amazing really to think that bike that will come back into the bike race after an absence of more than 10 years, and that will be a point where it'll be certainly worthwhile going out to watch the Tour of Flanders, because in the old days it was almost impossible for the majority of the bike riders to actually get up there on the machines, Phil. You know, that only 10 or 15 riders in wet conditions were able to ride over the summit of that climb.
Yeah, because of the packing of the riders, you can't find a rhythm to have a good climb on it. If you're by yourself, it's not quite such a difficult prospect now. It looks like the new Faso Bartolo team here, trying to get a man away.
Looks like their Ukrainian rider, Vladimir Gustov, who's gone clear there over the cobblestones, and they're actually starting to force a little group off the front here, but still the main field is in a big long line whenever they come to these narrow, small Flandrian roads, and they're always trying to keep to the front, because it is a very dangerous bike race as well, because if you get caught at the back there, you're always going to get involved with some kind of incident.
Remember, the two leaders are split now. The Molenberg is going to be much more of a climb for the challenge. It's one of the regulars in the Tour of Flanders, and this little group is beginning to make ground now, and this was really started by Jackie Giron, but I don't see him in the group. He's got a couple of teammates up here. Koen Beckman looks like he's sitting on the back, and Thierry Marichal is the rider just in front of him, but there's 4 riders there, and I'm wondering, Paul, if that Lamprey man is Robbie Hunter. It is Robbie Hunter.
Well, that's good to see Robbie Hunter. We've been actually staying at the same hotel as the Lamprey squad all week, and you know, Robbie was quite confident that he could get up into the breakaway situation, although for him the most important bike race in this week is really the Gemwevelgem. That's a race for the sprinters, which is going to happen on Wednesday, but he certainly is quite confident and quite keen to be out there helping the team and helping his big leader, who's Franco Ballerini.
Well, we've got that little group, and again it looks like we've got a Fassa Bartolo rider joining, and he's just nipped onto the back, and they're saying it's Giordani. So Giordani is the man who's come in. So they're the 5 riders trying to get clear now, approximately 5.5 minutes behind the split of the 2 leaders up front. Still riding strongly, and the hills have started now, and they're going to keep on a-coming.
Well, strangely, after what we were just saying about Scotty Sunderland is actually in this group as well. He's forced the move over the top of that little climb there and got himself into a situation where he's moved into the leading group of 5, and that will give him a lot of morale, because he didn't have the real thought this morning that he would be a factor in the bike race, but getting into a move like this is quite a serious proposal for a rider who is on a Belgian squad. He rides for Palmans, that's him in second position there, and it looks as if this group is actually going to open up a little bit of an advantage over the rest of the field.
Well, Scott Sunderland speaks fluent Flemish, and his wife speaks very fluent English, or rather Australian, and I must say, when I was with her over Christmas, just after Christmas in Australia, I thought she was actually English. Her accent was so good, but she certainly isn't. She's from Belgium, and Scotty can speak her language as well.
Well, this team, the Faso Bartolo team, is the team of Fabio Baldato, a new team that's been put together this year in Italy. There is Beckman, the rider from Lotto. There's Scotty Sunderland riding for Polmans. And they've done a good job here. You see the Lotto squad have put 2 men into this group. A bit surprising, really, to see them in an attacking style like this. 2 riders. This is Thierry Marichal just now, and a little bit of scandal over the winter months, because Jean-Luc Vandenbroek, who'd been the team manager for many years, in fact around about 10 years since he retired from racing, was actually put into a position where he had to leave the team. He was demoted really down to just the position as team manager, because before he held the position of general manager, he was in charge of negotiating contracts, looking after riders, but I think they were a little bit upset by the fact that he was employing a lot of his own family, and that demotion led to his actual resignation, and it brought in Jos Brackerveld, who's been the eternal assistant team manager, into the role of number 1 spot.
Yes, and of course already the arguments have started between Jos and Jackie Giron. I don't know if you notice here, Paul, the crowd know where the riders are going to ride, which is across the front garden by the look of it at the moment, because they don't even stand on the sidewalks. They stand away from the sidewalks because they know the riders are going to use those sidewalks instead of the cobblestones. But that is not the way to do it, and there's a nasty bit of a fall there.
That was very nice. It looks like a Vitalio Seguros rider from Spain has gone down there, trying to jump up on the curb. And what happens in this, it's Eliao Adjiana who's gone down, in fact. And what happened there, Phil, was he was trying to jump up off the main road onto the pavement, and he will have caught his wheel slightly, not jumping correctly, and just flipped over. But I think he'll be okay. That would look to me to be a pretty superficial injury.
Well, let's hope so. And he was in no rush to get back on his bike, but we leave him behind now because it looks to me as though we're approaching the Molenberg, which will put us around 152 kilometres as they try to reorganise themselves here after that short stretch of cobblestones. And we're on plenty more of them now, as again the riders trying to hold their position. And every man, although the inner bunch, is working hard just to stay there. It's not a question of being sucked along in the slipstream of the rider. Each individual is working hard. I think we might get another glimpse of this crash here. No, there's another one into somebody's rose garden there. That's a Polty boy who's gone down.
Everybody taking risks, you see. You want to try and get over to the right-hand side because it's just a little bit faster and a little bit easier than it is riding on the cobblestones. But you are taking risks because the road is obviously uneven and not actually meant for riding a bike on, and that's why that young man went down. We're on the Molenberg now in about 5 kilometres time, and this is the Volkerhemberg. It's actually a cobblestone section, and de Klerk is still at the head of the bike race, but his gap is coming down quite dramatically.
Yeah, he's actually about to turn onto the Molenberg now, so he's still quite a way ahead, isn't he? As we only climb from sea level up to about 100 feet, but it is a toughie.
It certainly is. He'll be happy to be riding this on his own, but there'll be a big fight in the main field in a few moments' time for them to come into this position in the first 10 or 20 riders, because it is a narrow climb. You can see it's almost only wide enough for a bike rider, let alone a car, to come up here. And these crowds, I have to say today, I reckon, are the biggest I've seen in the Tour of Flanders for many years, because there are people all over this bike race. Every climb is absolutely packed with people turning out to see what they're hoping is going to be a festival of Belgian cycling, because last year, let's not forget, the Belgians dominated this bike race, with the win going to Peter van Petegem, second place to another Belgian, Frank van den Broeke, and Johan Museo in third. So they're hoping maybe for a repeat performance.
Well, look at the crowd here. They're used to cheering Belgian winners, of course, in the Tour of Flanders. They've won 60 times this event, which has now had 83 editions before this one. So the Belgians have always been right at the front of their type of bike race, and they are very tough cycling people indeed. 25 teams on the start line this morning, and some of the big names not here. Names like Laurent Jalabert, the world number one, Frank van den Broeke, the wayward Frank van den Broeke, one might say, Jan Ullrich, the Billy Bunter of the world of cycling, Lance Armstrong, the American who won the Tour de France last year, and Michael Bogart, Abraham Olano. They're the big names not here, but in all honesty, this, apart from Frank van den Broeke, really, it's not their sort of race.
Now, this is a specialist race. You have to be a special man to get motivated for races like the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. Georgie Hincapie obviously is motivated for these events, but the Belgians feel today, Phil, that Johan Museo has got a chance of taking his 4th victory in this event. They reckon after his accident he fought back for 12 months to bring himself up to a level of competition, and now he feels that he's got the same strength in his legs that he had before the accident. And if that is the case, Museo has a very good chance of winning this bike race today.
And the peloton heading up towards the Molenberg now, as Eric de Klerk, a professional since 1991, keeps his nose out front. There's the main peloton, a tight fit around that right-hander as riders try to steal a march from the back to the front, and then the rest have to queue. This is the difficult bit now as the bunch filters round. You see they're almost at a standstill down there. Makes it a very difficult climb. And this is Sergei Ivanov now setting the pace, the champion of Russia. And he looks as though he's going to sit down and drive up this very steep climb here.
I feel it's interesting to know that Ivanov is actually riding this bike race, because he's much more a rider suited to a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But in fact, Peter van Petegem asked him specifically to ride the Tour of Flanders because he felt that he would be able to help him on these cobblestone sections. Van Petegem is right in there as well, in about 3rd or 4th place in the grey jersey there of the Farm Frites squad. And you can see that he's actually opened up a gap, Ivanov. He's supposed to be working. This is the reason why you shouldn't be at the back, because somebody's always going to fall off.
And this is one of the Fassa Bortolo riders who's gone down. The crowd has sorted him out, and a little bit of chaos again here as Jörg Ludwig of Seiko gets a bit of a helping hand. and the rescue up for a push as well. It's a very difficult situation. Jean-Michel Tessier of La Française des Jeux was the white jerseyed rider. As we race forward now, see, this is the problem now. The guys at the back are constantly going to be defending, whereas the boys at the front are trying to crack the field, and only 30 or 40 of them are in a position to do anything about it.
It really is like a piece of elastic, and that's another reason why you shouldn't ride at the back in a race like the Tour of Flanders, because you're constantly accelerating and decelerating, trying to stay in contact with the field in front, whereas the riders at the front, they might fight a little bit harder to get into the corner to go up the climb in the first few places, but once they actually get to that climb, they don't normally attack at this part of the bike race. They just normally ride at their own pace. But what happens is, as we see at the back, everybody's queuing up then to try and get into the corner of that climb, and that's why we have a big situation where over the top they've got to accelerate to try and stay in contact.
And just look at the way this race is split now. It looks as though we are indeed getting a group of about 16 to 20 riders, all down to the efforts of this man, Sergei Ivanov, done all of the work all the way up the climb and continuing to set the pace over the top. He's obviously trying to set this up. This is the first weakener in favour of Peter van Petegem, and Sergei has got no thought of necessarily finishing this race. It's to hurt the race and to break it up, because it was a little bit unmanageable with so many riders. Looks like plan A has succeeded as well, because that's a nice little group.
Certainly is. There's a big split there. You can see the rest of the group is right behind, but I think they will manage to drag themselves back up to the lead group. There is Van Petegem in second position now with his sunglasses on. This is the situation out on the road at the moment. The two leaders have split up, and there's 4 minutes and 15 seconds now between de Klerk and Hoover, and the main field not eating too rapidly into the advantage of de Klerk. 5 minutes and 45 seconds, but still I feel that they'll accelerate a lot more, Phil, after this lone leader now, de Klerk, when we get closer to the climb of the Old Quaremont.
Well, Eric here, 12 wins to his career. He started as a pro back in 1991. He's now almost 33 years of age, so he's getting towards the end of what has been a nice career for a professional in Belgium. He's not been a big winner. A lot of the Kermesses in Belgium has come his way. We saw him for the first time when he won a stage of the British Tour of Britain back in 1993. But since then he's just won local races. But he's certainly grabbed a slice of publicity today in the Tour of Flanders. He's been out front for a long way now. And as Paul has said, although the field are reacting, they're taking a long time to reduce the gap. They've knocked a few seconds off, no more than that. He's still, though, Paul, the best part of 70 miles to ride.
That's a section of cobbles there called the Paddestraat. It's a very long section of cobblestones as well. It's over 2 kilometres in length. And that little group that went off the front of the main field now has been caught once again. But obviously, it's interesting to note that the riders from Farm Friets are very aggressive already at the front, with still 70 miles of bike racing to go to the finish, trying to split this race to pieces.
It's still, you're right, it's a big bunch that's come back there. Van Petegem, though, driving at the front, won't be too happy with the situation, as quite a lot of riders have got back, and he's put another couple of the Farm Friets boys up here, 3 of them in fact, to try and drive on.
This is Gervais Carnarvon on the front of the group here, at the front, going into the Paddestraat. I think the important factor today, Phil, is that although that it's a very cloudy and overcast day, is there isn't that much wind, and that's the thing that the riders, the Belgian riders specifically, really enjoy about the Tour of Flanders, because they know how to ride in those windy conditions. Carnarvon now has moved across to the smoother part of the road. There is Johan Museeuw riding very much to the front. A couple of places behind him is Zanini, and there is Eric Zabel, the leader of the World Cup, and the chaos in the group behind.
Well, the riders are scrabbling. Next up will be the Kleisberg. That's a nice little climb, first put into the Tour of Flanders back in the mid-50s. As the riders now are trying to just hold their position once again, seek out that little bit of smooth road. Well, I can see Salvatore Camesso, the champion of Italy there, number 3 wheel, trying to join 2 attacking riders.
Well, Salvatore Camesso had a pretty good start to the season. I saw him racing in the Vodacom Report Tour in South Africa, where he wasn't riding as well maybe as he thought he was. He was lying in 3rd place in the overall standings, and he's actually evicted from the race for taking a swing at one of the riders from a lesser German team called the Agro Adler team, who were actually leading the bike race, and he probably felt that as he was a member of Psycho Cannondale and a member of Mario Cipollini's team, they should really not be getting beaten by a smaller second division team.
Well, pride, but you're not allowed to hit a rider. There's only one penalty for that, and it's take the aeroplane ticket and off you go.
he was pretty smartly kicked out of that bike race, and he wasn't too happy about it. And I thought actually on his return to Europe he may well have got a fine or a suspension from his national federation, but maybe as he is the Italian national champion, the Italians were not quite as hard as they should have been.
Well, he's certainly riding up at the front here. We've got an attack by Rabobank and La Française des Jeux, and the Telecom boys are getting in on the action too, which is nice and interesting to note. This looks like Stefan Westermann who's having a dig here. No, it's Ralf Grabsch. Grabsch who's trying to reach the leaders. Good sign if the Telecoms are moving to the action, that Erik Zabel has tipped them the wink that he's feeling pretty good today. As we heard at the beginning of the race when Paul talked to Erik, it's a race he's never excelled in, but his form this year is better than ever, I think. And he's won, of course, Milan-San Remo again. In 4 years he's had 3 wins and a second in that brilliant classic, and this is round 2 of the World Cup.
Well, I reckon he's a rider capable of performing well in the Tour of Flanders. You know, to do well in the Tour of Flanders, you do have to have an awful lot of luck, or at least not have any bad luck. He's the kind of rider who can ride well over the cobblestones, and I do feel that one day or another we'll see Erik Zabel perform well in a bike race like this, and it may well be today, because he certainly has got the right form and good condition. This is the group that we've actually kind of forgotten about. This is a group that's caught in between the leaders and the main field at the moment.
Serpellini is the Lamprey rider, just looking over his shoulder there. So this is a group that slipped away, because it's not the Hunter group. That's back in the pack now, as far as we know. Swept up, but they are now beginning to rapidly eat into the lead of their Eric de Klerk, and I think very shortly they'll be thinking more of picking him up and planning on new leaders. But there's a nice little group there, Paul, 15-20 riders getting off the front at an interesting point to the race, because it's not really on a climb at all. Now let's have a look at all the climbs to come. There's a list of them for you, right through to the Bosberg, which is the last one on the far right before we springboard our way down to Meerbecker. The one at Gerardsbergen, which is the Muur, the wall, and that's where the riders try to break up anybody who's left at the front, but we'll see what happens today. You can see, Paul, they're a little bit late springtime here this year. The trees are just about to burst, but they're not coming yet. Look at that echelon.
That's an incredible echelon across the road. This is a kind of move that would surprise one or two of the big names here, and they will try and react as quickly as possible. This is Chris Peers on the front for the Cofidis squad, and in there that looked as if the Faso Bottolo rider, who in fact was Fabio Baldata, who himself riding for this new team is actually in pretty good form so far this season, but they daren't let a group of 15 or 20 riders get clear, because then that will make a very hard chase in the group behind.
Yes, it depends who's in it, of course. We're going to find out now. Hondo, Steels, Nardello, Baldata, you're right, Vierhouten, Pronk, Sorensen, that great old man who can read everything, Serpellini, we've seen him. And looking down, Lars Mikkelsen is here, Jackie Durand again, and Marty Jemison and Klinger, the 2 United States boys, have got themselves up here. Stuart O'Grady I haven't seen, but they say he's up here. This is a very big group right now, but there's some very big names missing as Marty Jemison pulls through.
Well, there's Marty Jemison in the Stars and Stripes jersey as the American national champion. But there is a reaction looking down the road there, Phil. You can see the rest of the main group, and they're not going to let a group this big certainly get off the front as we get closer now to the more important climbs of the day, which I've always regarded as being the most strategic part of the Tour of Flanders. And there is the big group, and on the front it's the Farm Friets boys. So they're actually betting, even though they've got a man in the front group, just on one bike rider today. They're betting on Peter van Petegem, and that is actually not a very good tactical move in a race like the Tour of Flanders, because it's so important to have your strengthening numbers when it comes down to the final kilometres.
Well, it's down to 2 minutes 34 seconds now, so the gap is beginning to close, and very shortly Eric de Klerk, well, about another 10 kilometres probably to wipe him out. Now is this Vierhouten who's trying to bridge the gap?
Out of the pack there it is, number 51, Vierhouten. He's actually waited until he felt that the main field was coming back to make the junction to leap out there. And again, this just goes to show the big rivalry between the Rabobank team from Holland and the Farm Friets team. There's always been a super rivalry between those teams, because in fact the Farm Friets team has taken over the former TVM squad, and the two teams, although strangely enough were run by riders who were great teammates together. Jan Raas running the Rabobank squad and Kees Priem, who used to run the TVM squad, were the greatest of teammates. In fact, Kees Priem was the domestique for Jan Raas on many occasions, but once they actually had the two teams, the rivalry between them really has gone on.
Well, there is Art Vierhouten, which is Art Forwards converted to English, as he looks over his shoulder to see if he's got some company. Here they come. It could be a three-man group here. Just what the doctor ordered to start work. Now, I think Lars Mikkelsen's there, isn't he? Certainly a Française de Jeu rider who's got across.
Well, that is Mikkelsen who's moved up there. Now, this is a very interesting move. Everybody is going to work in this group because it's a group of 3 riders. Before, when you get a group of 15 or 20 bike riders, you've always got a few passengers, so nobody wants to really give full turns at the front. That way you get a little bit of disorganization, but a smaller group like this is much more compact and much more likely to work together.
The third rider there is from Mercatoni Uno, and that is Gian Mario Ortenzi. They're without their team leader, of course, Marco Pantani, who's still very unsure of himself, both physically and psychologically, and we're not seeing too much of him at all just now. But I must say this group has come to the World Cup with the minimum number of riders. They've started with only 6 men.
As has the Once squad as well from Spain, led by Laurent Jalabert. But look at this, another man's popped across the gap there. Another bike rider pretty close to retirement who's still got great form. 122, Jesper Skibby. You can see the pain on his face from that effort getting across there, but Skibby also is a bike rider who's pretty good at reading a race out on the course, and he's the man really sort of responsible for the withdrawal of the Koppenberg, because a few years ago when he was leading the bike race, he actually fell off on the Koppenberg, and the race referee behind panicked, actually rode over his bike and destroyed it and left Skibby at the side of the road.
Yes, and boy, that referee was not a happy man because of the criticism he faced from the crowd at the time and the press afterwards, etc, etc. But Jesper Skibby is a marvellous boy, and he's still continuing well. He was going to retire last year, but he had such a good season, he thought he'd extend it a bit. Now, there looks as though it's not going to be much longer for poor old Eric de Klerk out front, and this race is still reorganising itself at the back. These are the 4 riders here. Skibby's the last man. He's setting the pace at the moment. He's riding for the memory card Jack and Jones team, and on the far right there, it looks as though it's the first catch.
Well, that's being caught there by the leading group, the chasing group of 4 riders. A long day in the saddle for Eric de Klerk, and still the courage to get onto the back of the group and try and stay at the front of the bike race for as long as possible. That really is the tactics for a lot of the smaller teams when we come to these World Cup races, especially up here in Belgium. The race is on TV live for almost 4 hours, and if a sponsor can get some TV time for a couple of hours, then he reckons he's paid for his week.
Well, 100 kilometres in front there for de Klerk. We're now at 180 kilometres done, and the gap is opening, and de Klerk probably left to fry a bit too long there. This group will be too fresh for him, I think, as we now go to the next challenge. Quite a serious climb here, the Kleisberg, and this will be the hill number 5 on the course, so there's still 11 more after this.
This is a really tough climb. It's a tarmac climb, as you can see. There's Lars Mikkelsen nearest to us there in the white jersey. It's actually called the Mont de l'Enclus in French, and this is the part of the Courseville that I feel is really the most strategic part, the beginning of the Tour of Flanders. Once they go over this, they drop down the other side. They've got the Knottenberg coming after that, then almost immediately after that the Old Quaremont, and this is where the big pressure comes on in the main field behind. Obviously at the moment we've got this leading group of 5 riders who for me are 5 riders just hoping to survive and hoping that they'll get picked up by a leading group off the front of the main field, currently being led by Frankie Andreu and Marty Jemison. That's good to see, and there in there as well is Ekimov, and in 4th position Georgi Hincapie, so he's announcing the colours early.
They are putting the 4 US Postal boys on the front here to drive this race along. It's good to see that Frankie is feeling good after his accident earlier this week, and seems to have ridden himself back into some good form here, and he gives the team a lot of confidence when he can ride like this. And Jemison just behind him, the champion of the United States. He might well try and defend that title in Philadelphia in June this year. The gap, though, has flown up to 3 minutes now, and remember the leaders are on the Kleisberg. The main field is approaching.
This is a very hard part, and in fact those leaders now down to 4 riders, because we're hearing over race radio that in fact Eric de Klerk has been dropped by that group and he's caught somewhere in no man's land, soon to be picked up and left behind. You can also see the pink and blue jerseys of Lampre. There's Evgeny Spruk there just in the picture. They're moving to the front now because they too realise they've got to move up their man Franco Ballerini, who would certainly like to get a good placing in this bike race. He's the kind of bike rider who's always come up for the big occasions, always turns up for Paris-Roubaix or the Tour of Flanders. He's yet to win the Tour of Flanders, and that certainly would be a feather in his cap.
But he is a superb classic rider. He's always there in the top 6. He's so consistent. If you couldn't really follow a better man and be sure of a high finish if you could stay with him, because he just seems to read classic races so much easier than most people. Nice shot of Marty here, flying the flag at the front of the peloton of the Tour of Flanders today. Bit upset he never got a ride on the team in the Tour de France last year, but he hopes that the situation will change this year, of course, when the US Postal will go in with the defending champion Lance Armstrong.
A lot of US Postal Service riders very much to the front there. Not only are they being led up the slopes here by Marty Jemison, there's a few more guys over to the left-hand side. From George Hincapie looking pretty good. It looks as if Frankie Andreu is slipping away a little bit from the leaders here, but Frankie did his job. I think he was pretty happy and surprised to still be in at this stage of the Tour of Flanders, because he had a pretty nasty spill in the 3 days of Le Panne there, bruising a couple of ribs and having to spend one night in hospital at least. But I'm glad to say that he's safe, and he'll be good in good form next week when we go through to Paris-Roubaix. This is the chaos at the back. The bike race certainly going on at the front.
And the gap there, 2 minutes 58. That's the official time gap. Now, it's not a big gap yet, of course, and those riders up front are Art Verhoeven, Lars Mikkelsen and Jean-Mario Ottenzi and Jesper Skibby. We believe that de Klerk has been dispatched, and we'll try and pick him up with our cameras as we move towards him, I would think, as the main field now. Well, I suppose really the big danger man up there, because of his solidarity, will be Mikkelsen if he stays away.
Absolutely, but there's still going to be a big acceleration over the next few kilometres as we go over the top of the Klausberg. They go down the other side now, and then they ride. Looks like there's a problem at the back.
In fact, that is Marty Jemison, and the other rider is Dylan Casey. So it's a swap of wheels here. I think it must have been Jemison who punctured, and Dylan Casey, the younger rider, has given him his wheel to get him back in the race very quickly. So a good move there by the two boys. No team cars around to help out at that moment, so it should be okay for at least Marty. Not too sure whether Dylan will get back.
Well, the problem with the Tour of Flanders is sometimes you've got to wait for 2 or 3 minutes because these roads are so narrow, and if a couple of bike riders have been dropped on one of the earlier climbs, the cars can be blocked back an awful long way.
And you're right, Paul. In fact, de Klerk isn't here now as we look at Verhoeven. And then Ottenzi. Sitting at the back at the moment is Lars Mikkelsen, as we're now on the climb of the Knokteberg.
It's a tough little climb too. It doesn't seem very much because you only climb up about 50 metres or so. It starts off quite flat here through the fields, but once you get to the top it just seems to get steeper and steeper before you then level out and come out onto a street which is called the Ronde van Vlaanderenstraat, which basically translates into the street of the Tour of Flanders, because there's a road that has always been used since the beginning of time by this bike race.
And these guys now are facing what is a climb averaging 8%, so that is quite steep. It's 1 in 12 in our language. As they now look as though, it looks as though Verhoeven here is just having to work a little bit harder than the others to hold contact. Now again, the public, after seeing the riders up here, will be racing for their cars and heading to the next climb. 2 minutes 40, down from 3:04, so there's a reaction.
This is a good point on the course if you ever do come out to Belgium, because you can actually see the bike race twice here in 15 minutes. They're reaching the top here now of the Knokteberg, and very shortly they will take a left-hand turn to go down onto the main road, and on the far side of the field, if they had a look, they would see the summit of the Old Quaremont. So if you just actually walk across the road here, you see these riders on 2 occasions.
So there you have it from Paul, who has ridden the Tour of Flanders, of course, in his pro days. Back to the main pack here, Telecom, just keeping the rhythm nice. Too early to start worrying yet about the breakaway. The Lotto boys always anxious to stay to the front in their home classic.
There in the white helmet in the middle there of the 3 Lotto boys is Andre Schmiels, already moving himself to the front. You see, all of these riders do feel that the Old Quaremont is a very important part of the bike race, which is why they're moving to the front even on this climb, which is not normally where we expect it to split up. And this Mappe rider at the back, in fact, is Tom Steels. Steels is having a hard time here. I would think that his role today will have been basically to look after Johan Muser. Well, there's Eric de Klerk. He's had a good race. He's been at the front of the race for an awful long time. He's being picked up by the main field, and the leading group of 4 now in excess of 3 minutes.
A little bit of trouble for some of the riders from Credit Agricole here as the pace begins to bite into the legs. That was Tor Hushovd, the new Norwegian rider on Credit Agricole. A lot of people saying that man has an awful lot of natural talent and will come good as he settles into the pro game. And that's Frank Pencole from the Frenchman on the team here, just in front of our camera.
This is not a great place to be, because once you turn on, this is the Ronde van Vlaanderen Straat that they're turning onto right now. They'll just drop down here for about 500 metres, and then they'll turn left down into the town of Kruisbergen. And you can actually see at the top there, Phil, the crowd running away now, having seen the bike race, because they're going to go to the other side of the field and see the bike riders coming up to the summit of the Old Quaremont. The 4 leaders now are actually on the bottom slopes of the Old Quaremont, and they'll be pretty happy, I think, because they won't have to go through the chaos of trying to stay in the front. This road that we're on here as we approach the bottom of the Old Quaremont is really very narrow. You can see that it's 10% at its highest point, but I always think the hardest part of the Old Quaremont is actually not the bottom section of cobbles. It's when the road actually levels out over the top, because you've always got a little bit of side wind there, and once the big riders get their big gears going, they really can hammer along, and they're doing around about 40 kilometres an hour uphill.
Well, the Quaremont is along that little ridge just ahead of the riders at the moment, and these 4 are going to get a better shot at it than the main field. It starts with an asphalt surface, and then it moves on to the cobbled section that takes them up into the town. And these are the cobblestones of the Old Quaremont, and one man who knows all about them, he's with us on the trip, is Graham Jones.
Traditionally, where all the big moves are made in the Tour of Flanders, I mean, this race is for me the biggest and the toughest classic of them all. Where your thighs are burning, your lungs are burning, and you just every part of you is aching, and you just want to get this climb over. But unfortunately, within a couple of miles, you're on another climb, and just the climbs just keep coming.
When these bike riders come up here on Sunday, they'll already have done 100 miles. They won't be able to ride on the soft part, the side of the road. There's going to be 250,000 spectators. This is where the Tour of Flanders can be lost. I'm not saying you can win it here, but really, if you're caught at the back of the pack here, you can lose 5 minutes by the top, which is why all the big favourites have to fight to stay near the front.
Well, this is the Koppenberg. This was a feature of the Tour of Flanders in the late 70s and early 80s. But unfortunately, the race became a bit of a farce after usually only 3 or 4 riders ever managed to ride up. But one rider fell and the whole field was blocked. So it was almost like a cyclocross, and eventually the race has been, climb has been dropped from the race. But I've heard rumours that they'd like to bring it back.
Well, Belgium's a strange little place sometimes. It's obviously been made renowned for its bike racing, the Tour of Flanders, Ghent-Wevelgem, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Climbs like this one, the Koppenberg, which is really a very famous climb. But just like the British, the Belgians certainly have a penchant for the eccentric. Check out this person's garden. They live at the bottom of one of the most famous climbs in the world of bike riding, and this person has decided to collect a strange number of artifacts which look as if they're things that were left behind by spectators from the Tour of Flanders once they'd had too much to drink. There's a stuffed pony there. There's a Second World War monkey, and if you run out of baby dolls, you can bring your dolls down here to the tractor farm. Not exactly what I'd choose for my back garden, but it takes a lot of different kinds of people to make a world. Come and see it sometime. It's weird.
But it's also Belgium, and they make hills like this, and Paul Sherwen on the left in his days, alongside Laurent Fignon, who won the Tour de France twice. Well, they had a little walk here up the old Koppenberg. And now back to the action. They're still wondering how they're going to catch up now with that small breakaway, and the Farmfleet boys again are driving the train.
Well, they're pretty serious. Everybody knows, as Graham Jones told us there, Phil, that the Old Quaremont is regarded by all of the teams, all of the team managers, as the strategic point number 1. This is where the bike race really starts. And I think you have to say, you're not going to win the Tour of Flanders here, but if you come into the Old Quaremont in a bad position, you certainly can lose it. Because if you're not in the first 15, 20 riders over the top, you can find yourselves by the summit of this climb more than 2 minutes behind.
Well, that's what they are at the moment, actually. Just 2:11 to the main field as the riders now climb up the Quaremont here, and one rider trying to slip away from the field here. It looks to me as though it might be Skibby.
Well, Skibby, very experienced bike rider. You see how he flicked across straight away into the drain side of the road there. The reason he's done that is just to give himself a little bit of a rest, just to pick up the pace somewhat. He knows this climb, he knows this bike race, and he looks to me as if he's really pounding away. You see the technique of riding on these steep cobble climbs as well. You have to sit down in the saddle, because if you get out of the saddle and try and pull on the handlebars, you just don't have any traction at all. And Skibby sitting right behind their bottom bracket there, keeping the pressure on. We check the police lady there, just keeping the crowds back. The crowd's phenomenal this afternoon, and Skibby's opened up a pretty serious gap.
He has, and he's doing very well on what is a 10% or 1 in 10 climb. Once we get up into the town, there's a crossroads and it gets a little bit smoother, but the climb does continue, although nothing like this. There's a nice little cafe at the top of the hill too, but I don't suppose that Jesper Skibby will be calling in today. He's climbed away from the other 3 riders here, leaving behind his Scandinavian mate, Lars Mikkelsen, Fierhuten and Gian-Mario Ortenzi. Climbing very well. Look at this wonderful grandstand of spectators here. Absolutely orderly, enjoying the arrival of the Tour of Flanders. Without doubt, one of the best supported classics in the world, and indeed one of the oldest as well.
Just gone past the town square there. On the right hand side was the little cafe. If you ever ride around these roads of Flanders, you can stop for a little cup of tea. And in the main group behind, they're quite happy now. After the urgency of getting to the bottom corner, once you occupy the first 10 or 20 places, that's basically the race is over for the next kilometre or so, because nobody can accelerate around the outside and move up. This road is so narrow, it's only wide enough for 4 bike riders. On the front, Sergei Ivanov in the jersey of the champion of Russia, and in second place there, Peter van Petegem. Right behind him is Zevgeny Spruk.
Yeah, what happened here was just they started the climb. You may have seen there Ivanov look over his shoulder to check that Van Petegem was right on his wheel, and when he saw him, he immediately launched the acceleration, because he just wants to make sure that Van Petegem gets a sheltered ride up here, but at the same time the pressure might well split the field. It's certainly strung it out now. This is a magnificent piece of riding here by Ivanov. He's having a wonderful day in the Flanders hillside and looking for no help at all.
Well, it will split up. It always does here over the Old Quaremont. Just tagging onto the back of that group, which looks to be around about 10 bike riders, is André Schmiel himself. And I couldn't see Johan Museo in there, so obviously his team didn't manage to get him up there in ideal position. But Ivanov is doing a grand job here on the front, and I have to say, once they go over the summit, we'll probably see Van Petegem himself coming to the front to accelerate, because it's actually once you go through the town square that I always find to be the hardest part of this bike race, and you can see the damage is certainly being done by Ivanov, and that's really why Van Petegem asked him to come and ride this bike race.
And riders beginning to find themselves a little bit in trouble at the back of the bike race now as well, as this man is driving the pace on. The leading group has split. Skibby is still clear of the 3 chasers, while as we come steadily up towards the cobbled square here in Quaremont, the man who has set a brilliant pace and he split the field is the champion of Russia, Sergei Ivanov. And he's on the Farm Fritz team, and he's got his team leader tucked right into his wheel. That's the benefit of having strong domestics.
Absolutely, this is the back of the pack. Lots of riders now just surviving on this climb, just hoping to stay on the wheel of the man in front, while the hammer really is down there. Stefan Weserman, he's made it across to the leading group as well, and this looks like Henrik van Dijk of the Polman squad.
Henrik van Dijk it is, Polman's ideal, and he's tagged onto the back, and that could be a nice little move for him, because I think Andreas Kleie is also up here in this lead group, looking down there through the exhaust fumes of the helicopter at the moment. But we've got the 3 leaders up there, led again by Ivanov. 2 Lamprey riders have now slipped across to this group, and I think Zbigniew Spruk is one of them.
Spruk is the rider there in 3rd position, right on the wheel of Van Petegem. Van Petegem riding like a complete leader of the team here, very comfortably in 2nd position, feels he's got a chance of dominating this bike race once again. The man who's made it across to the back of that group, though, in fact, is Roman Weinstein's a very good sprinter and a kind of bike rider who, if it does end up being a big group sprint of 15 or 20 riders towards the end of this race, has got a good chance of winning. He's had a very good start to the season.
He certainly has, and he is developing into being a very much one of the professionals of the year. and he's got into this group now, one of the few that would give Peter van Petegem a run for his money if it was come down to a sprint. We're still a long way to go, of course, as we're still heading up now towards what will be hill number 8, which is the Peterberg, as they come now away from the Quaremont, and still this man Ivanov. What a fabulous piece of pacemaking he's doing.
Well, suffering down the gutter there. I just caught a glimpse of Andre Schmiel moving across onto the smooth little pavement at the side of the cobblestones, trying to accelerate, because you can see this is an important part of the race. Just trying to get a little bit of extra speed to get himself onto the back of this group. This top part of the Old Quaremont, by the way, has been added on over the last few years. The race used to go straight up and then go back onto the main road and then turn left. What they've done now is they've actually found an old farm track that carries on the climb for an extra 500 or 600 metres, just to add insult to injury.
I'm sure the race is delighted with that decision. The Australian Matt White here to the right of our picture. And Matt staying around Belgium and France for all of the early classics this year with his Vini Calderola team, and seems to get more and more confident as the seasons unfold. Now looking down there, 3, 6, looks about 10 riders, Paul, in that leading group. Remember, we still have the breakaway, and they're telling us now that Skibby is clear on his own. A minute 45. Now the minute 45, I'm not sure, but it might be back to this group here.
Well, Johan Museo is in this group, as well as Polini. Coming onto the back is Andreas Clear. Now they've got 1 minute 45 deficit on the riders at the front, and that will be Skibby. And it is interesting to note that, in fact, I didn't see Johan Museo at all on that climb, but he is now in this group of 10 bike riders. Now, this is a really difficult part of the course, because they've gone over the Old Quaremont. They've really put the hammer down. Legs are hurting a little bit just now from that effort, and they realise they've got, off the top of this climb, a slight descent, and then again, a really difficult climb, the Patersberg.
Well, I'm counting 9 riders now from the helicopter here, so the group is a little bit thinner, but it's quite clear too that Johan Museo is watching the whereabouts of Peter van Petegem. Oh, there's 9 chasing 10, so there we have the leaders there now, and there's the lineup for you. Another man who's riding exceedingly well is Stefan Westermann. Johan Museo, we're hoping he can come back this year after that terrible injury he had last year in Paris-Roubaix, or 2 years ago now, as he gets around that bend.
Well, in that chasing group there of 9 riders, I actually caught a glimpse of the leader of the World Cup, Eric Zabel, so a good ride by him, and also the US Postal Service rider George Hincapie is in there as well. This group, in theory, should come back together on this small descent before we hit the next very difficult climb of the Patersberg, which is after 209 kilometres of bike racing. It's the 8th climb of the day, and still 8 very difficult climbs to come. But this is when you really have to be at the front. This is Skibby now approaching the Patersberg. He'll take this right-hand turn. It's only about 350 metres long, but it's 20%.
And he's been in this position before in Tour of Flanders, alone in the lead, and he never seems to be happier than when he's showing the crowd off his true colours. He's a wonderful bike rider, and this, I think, will be his final season. And he'll be missed on the circuit. He's won some good races too over the years, and he's always good for a joke and a story if you ever get the chance to speak to him. Anyway, he's choosing the easy way. That's the privilege of being the race leader on the road. You can just take the smoother section of the course. Won't be the case, of course, for those riders back in the main pack. Skibby now just concentrating. I think he'd like some help, but he may not be getting it.
Well, he's not getting any at the moment. All these riders very happy today as well, because you can see the state of the cobblestones as well, which is pretty important at the Tour of Flanders. There's no mist today, there's no dampness, because these cobblestones, once they do get a slight coating of moisture over the top, it's almost impossible to ride on them. You can see the steepest part of the climb now, 20%, and Jesper Skibby is going to force the spectators to get back into the field, because he wants to ride here on the pavement. This is actually the drain normally, but it is so much smoother riding there than it is on the cobblestones. And Phil, this has got to be the biggest crowd ever at the Tour of Flanders.
Oh, this race just gets more and more popular. This is the steepest part of any part of the course here, 1 in 5. And Skibby is climbing it exceedingly easily, and it'll get easier now as he flips up towards the summit. Massive crowd here now, as big as the old days when cycling was so popular in Europe.
Great, he'd be going oof just now as he's gone over the top of the Patersberg, because that really does burn the legs. Here's the group now with Johan Museo coming to the front. This is the group now who's going to put the pressure on. Van Dijk wants to be first man. There's the group behind there with George Hincapie just making contact.
Well, still in between, we've got those 3 riders. We haven't seen them come back, of Mikkelsen, Hortensi and Skibby. Not Skibby, rather, Vierhouten. Haven't seen them come back, so I think they're still in between, but this is the race being paced up now by the Palmans rider. and just about one of the few men to get the better of Sergei Ivanov at the moment, who is very happy to set the pace and keep this race in contention. But it's a sticky old race at the back because there's a lot of riders will refuse to be dropped here. A long line now as they all try to get back up into that leading group.
A lot of riders coming back onto the group now because basically what happened, Van Dijk was setting the pace that was comfortable for him, but it wasn't comfortable enough for Sergei Ivanov. He's come to the front. He wants to put the hammer down again. They out today with a tactic of toughening this race up, making it as difficult as possible and trying to split it to pieces as early as they could. Sergei Ivanov, the champion of Russia, on the front there. Right on his wheel is Van Petegem. The man in third place, though, is Stefan Wesemann. Wesemann is a fantastic bike rider. 3 times a winner of the Peace Race. Looking down the line there, you can see the white jersey of Johan Museeuw. Coming further up is Peter Farazijn, the champion of Holland, Maarten ten Bakker. Quite a big group there. And it doesn't seem as if that group with George Hincapie actually managed to make the junction.
No, and life at the back here and dodging wheels there is Chris Piers, number 85. Well, Ivanov's having a wonderful season. He seemed to have a slow start in Langkawi, where he started favoured and didn't really excel at all. He couldn't shake anybody, but he did get up to 5th place in Milan San Remo, and since then, only last week, he finished 3rd in the 3 days of La Panna. Now it's just 60 kilometres from the finish, some 38 miles to race, and now it's everybody for himself here. And Paul, unusually so, there's still a lot of riders in this race with a chance.
Well, obviously, I reckon, as I said earlier, it's got a lot to do with the fact that the weather conditions are pretty clement today. It's a very pleasant spring day. There's hardly any wind at all, and that's normally the biggest damage maker in the Tour of Flanders. And obviously, as we had in the past, there's no rain, there's no snow. It's actually a pretty good day for bike racing, which is why so many of the other riders who would normally have been blown away so far are managing to stay in the race.
Well, that Noch Acht is another 8 climbs still to come. And as they get near the end of the famous Muur of Gerardsbergen and the Bosberg, which used to be the famous jumping off point for Edwig van Hooijdonk, who's now retired but won this race twice as a pro and also once as an amateur.
It's Peter Farazijn, the Lotto rider, on the front. The Lotto boys really sort of riding without a head because their team leader, Frank van den Broek, is reportedly supposed to head out to the United States of America. We wonder if he will go because he was looking for somewhere to train at altitude, and strangely enough he'd chosen California.
Yes, well, there's no knowing just what Frank will do next, but he is such a talent. Once he comes back, I'm sure we'll see him doing very well. This time last year, of course, he was riding extremely well. Winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which is still to come. And that will take us down into the other part of Belgium, from Flanders down into the Ardennes. Same country, but you'd never know it by the totally different scenery in the Ardennes, which is wooded and long, steep climbs, most of them with lovely surfaces, whereas here in Flanders, they're very short and sharp.
Well, for the moment, there are 3 major groups here as we look towards the next climb on the road, which will be Kortekeer. That's the 9th climb of the day. This is really a tough part of the course because we've got 3 very difficult climbs within the space of 15 kilometres. And as that group there, they all looked over their shoulders to see what was happening behind, and they could see a group of 10 or 15 riders chasing them and another group a little bit further behind. So I reckon we're going to get a general regrouping, and in fact I think there you can see the group of George Hincapie has made contact. This is the lone leader, Jesper Skibbe. He's now on the Kortekeer. It's an average of 6% and it's 8% at its the steepest part, but it's not that difficult to climb. And Skibbe, you see, the strange thing, Phil, about the Tour of Flanders is because it is so open, there's hardly any wooded area in this part of the world. You can actually look back over the race, and because it's zigzagging, you can get a rough idea of what your advantage is over the rest.
So hill number 9, Jesper Skibbe of Denmark, setting the pace at the moment. And looking across to see if anybody's going to give him a hand here, because his 3 mates have dropped further back now.
It's going to be a long, lone ride for Jesper Skibbe. Riding through this section of the race, he's hoping that if there is a break off the front of the main pack, it will be 7 or 8 riders who'll come forward, and then he'll be able to tag onto the back. But what's happened is there's been a general regrouping, so that means that Jesper Skibbe is going to stay out of the front of this bike race for quite some time. They'll put down their arms a little bit for a while to try and just see what the tactic's going to be. This is Taffy now deciding he wants to tough it up from the Mappé squad.
And they're going to have to sort of trim the wings, I think, of Skibby, because he's annoying the system here. And this is Andrea Taffi, who's decided to have a little go. Well, you can't keep this man down for very long. He's one of the few Italians who just thrives in Flanders. He loves this region. And last year, of course, he showed us just how much he loved Paris-Roubaix as well. So Andrea Taffi out on the attack to try and wipe up the stragglers in between. And it looks as though there they are, and I think they're going to come back now. So they're still out there, you see, but not for very much longer. There's Vierhouten. I must say, Skibby Paul, this I make it his 15th season as a professional, and of course it'll be his last one. He's had a wonderful career, and well, he comes from good stock, I suppose, because his father Willie once got a bronze medal in the World Road Race Championships. I think that was back in the mid-60s.
His sister was a pretty good bike rider as well. Skibby now leading this bike race, the Tour of Flanders. The crowd certainly know him. He spent an awful lot of time in the Flandrian races because he rode for a long time for TVM. It was quite a shock when he changed to move across really to the Jack and Jones team, but I think he wanted to end his career riding for a Danish team and trying to bolster Danish cycling a little bit, because it's good to see that Denmark has come in with a top-ranked team, and this team will be hoping to put in some performances in the early part of the season, because their main goal this year is to try and get themselves a wild card for the Tour de France in the month of July.
Well, I'm sure they'll get it. They've come into the first division this year because they won the second division championship last year when it was Team Home Jack and Jones, but it's now Memory Card Jack and Jones, the team, as they now continue to press on here. But a bit of a sad start from this morning, because Nikolai Bo Larsen was one rider who gave a high reading for his hematocrit, for his blood level test. Of the 24 riders who were tested, he was the only one. He has not been allowed to start today. He is absolutely protesting his innocence, and strangely enough, the Danish journalists on the race seem to believe him. So it's a very strange affair. But you know, if he is found positive in any way, I think they might lose their sponsors from this team.
And certainly they've always said that if there is a problem with any form of doping with this Danish team, they will withdraw from the sport of cycling. There were 4 teams tested this morning. One was Vitalico Seguros, one was Cofidis, one was Farm Frites, and the other one was Memory Card, with that incident for Nikolai Bo Larsen. But it is, I think, very strange sometimes, Phil, the results that the teams nowadays are so worried about this 50% mark that they actually have the team doctors monitor the riders on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And very often the team doctor will come in with a result the day before a race, and when the UCI come and do the test the following day, the rider finds that his hematocrit is high. So I do wonder if there may well be a slight problem with the testing procedures.
Well, that's exactly what the team is saying, because they claim to have checked Bo Larsen's hematocrit last night, and it was 46, well inside the magical figure of 50, or the hypothetical figure of 50. Once you're over that, then you're not allowed to race. Now, the organisation are not saying that you are drugged, but they are saying that it is unsafe at such a high level to take part in the sport, and they stand you down for 10 days or more.
Well, Taffi's made a good move here. On the front there, he's been joined here by Marco Serpellini and Mark Wouters for the Rabobank rider, the Rabobank team on the back there. Now, Wouters is a pretty impressive bike rider because he spent an awful long time in his career being a domestique, and last year he really sprung to fame. It really, I feel, all started when he won the Pro Tour in the United Kingdom, and he showed that he could be a leader of a big bike race, and from there he went on to win the Tour of Luxembourg, and at the end of the season he had a great performance by taking out Paris Tours when he was really expected to be working for one or two of his teammates. They've caught the group now with Michelson here in the middle. This is going to make a very strong working group of 5 bike riders.
Yes, but 3 of them are tired. It's the 3 of them at the back who are the original 3 of the original 4 that was away with Skibby now, and I can't see them staying at the front of this race much longer now as they continue to get battered over the cobbles. You're right about Wouters though, Paul. He had a little bit of bad luck in the Tour de France. He was involved in that serious prang on the Passage du Gois when all the riders fell down, and I think he resulted in a broken collarbone, if memory serves me right there. But he went on, of course, to have a great season. As you say, he won the Tour of Britain, he won the Tour of Luxembourg, he also won the Rhineland-Pfalz, which is another good race in Germany, and he got home in Paris Tours as well. So it was an exceptional season for the man who only sees himself as a pretty good domestique.
Well, this acceleration has proved too much for Lars Mikkelsen, who's been left behind by this group now, which is just 5 bike riders. On the front there is Vierhouten, followed very rapidly there by Andrea Taffi. Taffi It's really strange with the Mapei squad because they've got so many big-named bike riders in it that if you think you've got a chance of winning the bike race, it seems as if you've got to attack so far out from the finish, otherwise you're going to end up being in the role of a domestique.
Well, that's also right, but we're seeing here the sharp end because of our television cameras, and it just shows you how hard it is in a race like Flanders to establish a breakaway or a winning move. These riders are attacking at every opportunity. Look at this now, as the boys who were in that breakaway have finally cracked. We've just seen Vierhouten, and now we're seeing Hortensi. He's going to fall back to the main field. Mikkelsen has already gone, so we're only left with the three original riders now at the front. Not the original riders, but the new upcomers here as they start to push on. And sitting at the back here is Serpellini, Wouters, and Taffy is setting the pace.
I think, in fact, Skibby's not too far in front there because I just caught a sign of the team cars going around. There are the team cars. That's the neutral service vehicle. So Skibby must just be in front here. So now Skibby's going to have the help he was looking for, and it's going to be in the shape of Andrea Taffy, Wouters, and Serpellini. He'd be about ready as well, I think, to have some help from rear because he's been leading this bike race over some of the most difficult terrain so far.
In the province of Oost-Vlaanderen, but we're now heading towards the climb of the Taaienberg, so we've done around 220 kilometres of the race now, as our man from Russia again gets onto the front and starts to look after his team leader, Peter van Petegem. Sergei Ivanov has been something special today for the Farm Fritz team, that's for sure.
Well, the Taaienberg is the 10th race, the 10th climb of the day, and it's also, I reckon, almost as difficult as the climb of the Koppenberg. It's very steep, very much like the Patersberg, and that's another climb that you have to try and attack in the first 5 or 10 places. The thing about it is you've got this very tough cobblestone section as well before you actually get to it, just enough to shake the bones and rattle the muscles a little bit.
And this is Skibby, and now maybe they're showing this because the catch is coming. Yes, they are, because there is the catch. We were back there with the chase group of Sergei Ivanov, while these have it's our other camera now being played in for you, showing the catch. Now, they haven't really waited for him. Now, can he get back on? Because they've gone straight by. And yes, he has, because we're now back with the live pictures, and there he is. And so there are now 4 leaders as we're bound for the Taaienberg.
I have to say, Skibby's a pretty experienced bike rider. He would have known they were coming. He would have actually backed off just a little bit over the last kilometre or so to give himself a little breather, taken on some more food and some more drink to keep himself topped up, and would know that immediately they caught him, they would accelerate. And he was ready to respond to that, which is why now we're back at the front of this bike race with 4 leaders. But Taffy is looking very strong today. He wants to toughen this bike race up. He realises that it's not so important to him whether he gets caught or not, because if they don't get caught, he's got a great chance of winning, and if they do get caught, well done. He's actually toughened up the bike race for his own team. Look at this, Hortensi actually, who got dropped before, is recovering as well. He's going to drag himself back up to the leading group. He was in the early breakaway there, and he's now actually pulling himself back up, so we're going to have now 5 bike riders at the front of this race.
Well, good for him. At the 220 kilometre point, Hortensi is back here, and he's got himself up to the leaders. Now, he's found his second wind, but how long can he stay there as we head towards the Taaienberg? You see the maximum point on the course there of 17%. It's very steep. It's not very long. Looking at his face there, he's not enjoying his ride even on the back of this express train right now.
Certainly not going to enjoy the Taaienberg either. When they go over the top of the Taaienberg, they have 49 kilometres to go, and the time checks we're getting, Phil, is that the main group behind is still over a minute down.
But it's a very manageable gap, is 1 minute at this stage of the Tour of Flanders. Hortensi's here, but he's not going to contribute to this breakaway. A lot of work being put into it by Andrea Taffy. He's such a workhorse, that man. This is a stretch of the new cobblestones here, as we look down now to these riders at the front. Serpellini, I always seem to imagine little Serpellini there, former junior world champion, as a stage man. He's shown us this year he's on form because he got 5th in Tirreno Adriatico in Italy. But he has turned in some superb single-day performances over the last couple of years.
He's a pretty good bike rider, but the pressure on the front here from Mark Wouters, who is flying up this climb. Let's not forget he's a Belgian, he's racing on home turf, and one man who will be in difficulty, I reckon, now is Jesper Skibby, and of course Hortensi, who actually got dropped from this group and has recovered, unfortunately for him, just at the wrong time. There's the time gap back to the main group with all the big heroes in it, 1 minute and 3 seconds. But it's good to see Rabobank with a guy like Mark Wouters in a situation like this.
I think he's done very well, but obviously they were getting a little bit fed up with the way the Farm Freaks were dictating the pattern of the race from the back. And this is a good move by Rabobank now to have replaced their man Verhoeven at the front with another strong man in Mark Wouters, and he's not going to come back without a fight because he's setting all of the pace here. Serpellini, 7th in last year's Tour of Lombardy. He's finished 7th twice in that race, by the way, trying now to control the pace. But look at this, Paul. This could be a decisive move here on the Tyenberg because a lot of riders now are getting up here.
This is the big acceleration. It's so much more fast in the main group here. You can see in 3rd place there is Peter van Petegem. 2nd place is André Schmiel. Schmiel riding much more to the front nowadays. That's Evgeny Spruk. He's taking the hard option of actually riding on the cobblestones, but he wants to stay in the front 4 or 5 places. A lot of riders will be getting nailed off the back here. Just looking up the road there, we can see Lars Mikkelsen, who's about to get caught by this group here. But there's an omnipresence at the front of the bike race today, Phil, by the Lampre squad. Yeah. We were talking about Franco Ballerini, but Spruk himself is actually looking pretty good.
Maybe we're following the wrong rider because Ballerini is the man who's absent and Spruk is the ever-present just now. As Schmiel sits there in 3rd place, and if there's ever a classic rider, it's André Schmiel. I've lost count of the number of times that man's finished on the top 3 in the World's Classics, including a win, of course, in Paris-Roubaix and Milan-San Remo. But he really is a most superb classic rider. Back up to the leaders, Ortenzi doing the ride of his life, tagged onto the back.
Well, hats off really to Ortenzi because just looking there at the Tyenberg, he was actually tailed off and recovered a little bit over the top to pull himself back up into the leading group of 5. And having been dropped once, I had the feeling that he would be actually history over the Tyenberg, but he doesn't want to give up. He wants to keep himself in this bike race because you never know how the race is going to develop at the moment. So the option really is, the only one option is to stay for as long as you can in the front and hope that there is a return from the rear by 1 or 2 of the stronger riders, and then you see you're in a chance, because after that the Tour of Flanders really becomes a question of elimination. Those are the climbs left to go. The next one is the Eichenberg, but the big one that everybody fears now is the Muur de Grammel.
Absolutely, because they know that's where the attack will come, and it's a favourite climb of Johan Museeuw. He's been in one move today. We've lost sight of him for the moment, but he's certainly in that senior group which he's chasing at the back, and this is the group now as another attack is launched here as riders try to get something going. They're having a great difficulty here today in organising this event. When the stars put in an attack, the others close the gap, but when it's somebody like Mark Wouters has gone clear, or Andrea Taffy, they've allowed that gap to open.
This looks like Wilfred Peters who's trying to go clear here. Interesting to note, Stefan Weissermann is in that group as well. He's in 3rd place there in the pink and white jersey of the Telecom team. And obviously the Mappé boys today, Phil, have decided they want to try and toughen it up because they have got to make the racing hard because the weather conditions are so clement. Normally in the Tour of Flanders it's the wind and the rain that makes it very difficult, but because of that the teams are actually having to go out and really toughen up the race.
And Marcus Serpellini sitting here now, for the moment at least, at the back of the lead group as we continue our tour around Flanders, and still no obvious leader of the race. We've had no big breakaways since those 2 original breakaways of 2 young riders from Belgium were out front. Well, less young de Klerk, I suppose, at 33, but still. And then we've seen all of the breaks coming our way have never been allowed more than a minute to a minute and a quarter. This is Salvatore Gamesso, who's the champion of Italy. Hasn't won many bike races yet, but promising to be quite a star. Van Petegem slipping through, Museeuw is all here. So the big names are still here, but they haven't worked out how they can get rid of each other.
Well, they may well get a chance to do that on the next climb of the day, which is going to be the Eichenberg. 11th climb of the day, and over the summit of that we're really starting to get to the point where a breakaway towards the finish is possible, because over the top of the Eichenberg there's just 43 kilometres left to go to the finish, and Gamesso is the champion of Italy on the front there, keeping the pressure up. And all these little cobblestone sections you see now, Phil, are not even counted in the race handbook. This is just normal for Belgium. This is what you have to put up with when you race here.
It's a glorious spring day now in Belgium as the riders continue to course around. Eichenberg is 10% at its steepest point, as you can see. It's 1.2 kilometres long.
It's a very tough climb as well, but there is a small section halfway up with a piece of tarmac on there where you can actually just get a little bit of respite. 1,300 metres of cobblestones, and it looks to me as if they've actually relaid the cobblestones since last year, because those roads look quite smooth there. Taffy sitting in 4th position at the back there, and the man doing a great ride, the ride of his life, as you said earlier, is Ortenzi in the yellow jersey for Mercatone Uno at the back there. He must be pretty happy, because normally the Italians don't excel when they come up here. They don't have the morale, except for riders like Ballerini and Taffy. It's a special morale to excel in these races like the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix, because they're such tough bike races.
They don't like the country because they don't like the roads, and they don't like the weather in this part of Europe because they prefer the weather down south in Italy. Anyway, he's again finding that he's got the legs on the flat, but he's got a little problem on the climbs. He might lose ground again here. Now, the question is, can he roll back up to them? I don't think he's going to be there much longer.
A great ride here too by Skibby. Skibby's there in second place. Hortensi's gone. I think that's probably going to be for the last time now, because he obviously has been dropped on 2 occasions so far. But Skibby's doing the ride too, because Skibby, you see, was on his own from the bottom of the old Quaremont all the way until he got caught by these 3 chasers here, and now he's managing to survive and managing to stay with the tempo being set by everybody else. This is the little smooth section halfway up the climb where you get a chance to just get a breather off the cobblestones. It doesn't last too long, because then you have to flick across back onto the right hand side and ride the cobbles up to the summit.
Just looking there, Paul, following your early remark about the Italians, this race was began in 1913. Italians have only won on 7 occasions, and if you remember that one Italian, Fiorenzo Magni, won 3 times, then that doesn't leave too many Italian winners of this race.
They're still at the front of the main group, which is still more than 1 minute behind the leading group. The work is being done by the Farm Freaks team. In second place now is Sergei Ivanov. There, pretty much to the front as well, is Peter van Petegem. But they're taking a lot of risks now, and I feel, Phil, they've been doing much too much work, because when you get to the end of the bike race, you need to have a lot of teammates with you, and they're just blowing the team apart. They, I don't think, are adopting the right tactic today to put Peter van Petegem into a position where he can win this bike race for the 2nd year in succession.
Well, they're advertising to the rest of the race that they're the boys to beat, and that's not always a good thing, because the boys will just sit back and let them try as they continue to set the pace. I don't know how much longer Sergei Ivanov can stay up near the front here, because he's done so much work, and surely his legs are not going to hold out for the last few climbs to come.
What a fantastic bike rider, and there'll be a lot of shouts actually just from the side of the road now, because this is the area of Belgium where Peter van Petegem actually comes from. He comes from the town of Brakel, which it seems, if you've ever raced over in Belgium, nearly every other bike race goes through Brakel, whether it's one way or the other, and the Tour of Flanders actually goes through it on 2 separate occasions, and it's not very far away from the top here of the Eichenberg.
So 3 Farm Freaks riders setting the pace, one of them in the middle there, wearing the jersey as the champion of the Russian nation, Sergei Ivanov. Volkergem is where we are at the moment. Van Petegem is sitting on 3rd wheel, just letting his boys do the job for him in the hope that he will go to victory today, as he did last year when he pipped Frank van den Broek, Johan Museeuw, Michele Bartoli. And how sad it is that Bartoli went on to injure his knee in the Tour of Germany and seems to be having a little problem getting his form back at the moment.
Well, Andre Schmeel is riding a pretty clever race there. He was in 4th position right on the wheel of Peter van Petegem. Van Petegem is announcing that he feels strong today by making his team ride at the front like this. This is the top of the Eichenberg. This is where Joe Planckaert fell off last year. But you can see, Phil, that already we're still looking at a pretty big group for this stage of the Tour of Flanders, because we're only 25 miles to go. There is Museeuw going round. A lot of Mapei riders in this group, but for the moment they're not at the front dictating the pace.
And there you have the gap. It is barely a minute, but that's the way it's been for so many kilometres now. Another magnificent crowd there as they come over the top of the Eichenberg. But now, again, the field is split up, Paul. But once more, they're all scrabbling and coming back together.
Well, because of the weather conditions, nobody's really managed to blow this race apart, although TVM, I should say Farm Freaks, are doing an awful lot of the work at the front, trying to keep this race dominated. They're not actually opening up the big gaps. There you can see Van Petegem in 3rd place, moving up onto his wheel now in the red jersey of Lotto is Schmeel, and right up there as well is Johan Museeuw. These guys, the big leaders, are all very, very attentive, and we're not going to see the attacks coming until a little later on, certainly when we get to the climbs of Berendries, but I reckon everybody today may well be saving it because of these weather conditions until the Mur de Grammont.
Well, 25 miles or 40 kilometres just on, still to go. Certainly the leaders are through that mark. As Schmil sits there looking around, he's had a wonderful record in the Tour of Flanders. He's never won the event, he's had everything else but. As they gain, they're more interested, as Weinsteins looks over his shoulder, at the riders coming back onto the pack. This is a massive field at this stage of the Tour of Flanders. It is most unusual indeed. Our next challenge of the day will be hill number 12, and that's the climb of Leberg. And first in the Tour of Flanders back in 1977. And again, you see, Paul, they've shut it down at the front.
Certainly they have. There's also another little addition here to the Tour of Flanders. There's a cobblestone section, a new one that's been put in at Haaghoek, and that's what the riders will be coming to next, and that is just before the Leberg, which will leave the riders 36 kilometres to go to the finish. A little bumpy for the cameraman out there on the course.
And this is the smooth road. The riders right over to the right of our picture here, indicating the wind is coming from the left as we look at the television. An attack again by Kemesso. He also is trying to get things organised. It's 4 kilometres to the Leberg, as Kemesso riding a very good race here, this young man. And the field again are launching the chase. Now these attacks and counterattacks surely are bringing back those leaders up the road.
Well, this is the situation now. They're all trying to attack to get a small group off the front, because what's happened is nobody's really been able to blow the race apart, as is normally the situation in the Tour of Flanders. The pressure over the cobble climbs normally sees a lot of riders actually getting tailed off the back, but what's happening today, because the weather is so good, is they're all surviving and getting themselves back on. These little attacks now are from lesser riders, not the big riders like Johan Museeuw and André Schmil. These are from some of the smaller riders on the big teams trying to get themselves into a group.
Well, I'm actually just wondering what exactly is going on here at the moment, because the attacks are coming from other riders on the teams. Van Petergem has done everything possible with his Farm Friets boys, and they haven't solved a single problem yet, as again the race is reacting to that little attack, which it looks like it might have been Van Bon who went off there at the front for Rabobank, but they've got around Kemesso. And now the group reforming, as the Lotto riders decide now is the time to try and do something for André Schmil, perhaps.
Well, this is a good move. 2 Lotto riders moving forward there. 141 is André Schmil coming to the front with a teammate to help him there. This is the kind of ride, a very clever little one, which might catch 1 or 2 riders napping. Moving forward, Telecom, they've not let anybody get too far off the front there. Still is Johan Museeuw, keeping a very close eye, I would say, today on the performance of André Schmil. And obviously, as we've seen over the last 30 or 40 kilometres, he's never really been far away from Peter Van Petergem.
Well, there's a lot of riders here who will still fancy their chances today, and Schmil is one of them now, as he feels that he can move forward. He's doing a lot of hiding, as he so often does, but he follows wheels, he has an ever-presence. This is the new stretch of cobblestones you told us about.
It's a typical section of cobblestones here in Belgium. It goes downhill just slightly and then drags up towards the church in the distance there. Very fast, pretty reasonable cobblestones, but this year the organisation have put extra cobblestones in to bring the total in this year's Tour of Flanders to 20 kilometres of cobblestones on the road. Strangely, though, they actually have counted certain sections of cobblestones, but I reckon if they did add up the amount of cobbles in this bike race, it would be approaching that of Paris-Roubaix.
Yes, not quite as bad as Paris-Roubaix, of course, which we normally have around 50-55 kilometres. It looks as though Skibby has gone just then, and that's Hortense who's also gone, so this new stretch of cobblestones has in fact affected the running of this breakaway, leaving now just Taffy Wouters and Serpellini, and this time I think they've gone.
Well, Hortense leaping across to the left-hand side of the road there, getting into the grass just to give himself a little break. But interesting in that front group there, Phil, although Taffy was there, he wasn't doing a lot of the pacemaking at the front, so I'm not really quite sure what his tactics are. Again, it's the Farm Friets on the front there. In second place is Ekimov, fresh off a victory at the 3 days of La Panne. A very good win, I would have to say, for US Postal Service, because everybody looks at that race as a pointer to a performance in the Tour of Flanders. Ekimov switching again this winter to US Postal again. I think pretty happy to be back with the American squad.
I think he is, because he enjoys being with the Americans, the Slava as they call him. And that was a good performance, to say the least, because the Panne is seen as a real form guide to the early classics in Belgium and of course Paris-Roubaix as well.
Right in that group, I just caught a glimpse of the green and white jersey of Stuart O'Grady, so we haven't seen a whole lot of O'Grady today. He actually reportedly had a crash early on, but he's obviously in the group now, and you can see it's amazing to see in the Tour of Flanders field such a big group at this stage of the game. It's going to be interesting when we come to the next few climbs to see who are the guys who are going to go out there and launch the attacks. We've got 3 leaders off the front at the moment now that Skibby has finally been dropped. Taffy, Serpellini and Wouters, but it isn't much of a gap, and I would say that would be Jesper Skibby there, about to get caught by the main group.
The average speed there, 38.5 kilometres an hour, which is about 24 miles an hour, which is not bad for these hills. And it looks as though Skibby, who made the move from that early breakaway, has hung on to the chasers, but now has succumbed to the chase by the peloton. Is he able to lift the pace when he realises this is not a small group? This is a very, very considerable sized racing group here, and not the sort of group we expect to see at this stage of the Tour of Flanders when we are inside 25 miles to the finish.
Well, is he able to, or does he want to? I think he was expecting to see the Tour of Flanders split to pieces, and he would have been hoping for a high finish, and he will be pretty much demoralised by the fact he can see there's still around about 60 bike riders in this group. There are 3 leaders up the road. Their advantage is starting to come down though, Phil, because the main field is putting the pressure on. The last time check we got over Race Radio was 42 seconds, and still always at the front. The major part of the work has been done by the guys in the grey jerseys from Farm Frites, and they look to me to be sagging a little bit now. You can see the rocking and rolling of the shoulders as the leading group of 3 now approaching the Leiberg. 11% at the steepest part. Not a very steep part climb in average, because it's well under 5%, and it's not a cobble climb either, it's a tarmac one. Taffy now looking very nervous, as if he's about to launch an attack.
Yes, it could well be right. That Farm Frites rider always on the front now is Andreas Kleier, the only German on the Farm Frites team. So they've been using the Russian Sergei Ivanov. Now they've switched over to Germany, and of course they're all hoping to springboard their Belgian leader Peter van Petegem up to first place again in the Tour of Flanders. He rates this race above anything else. Now you're right, Taffy's gone to the front. Now can he push on here? Wouters is quick to mark him out. Serpellini looks very good at the moment, pedaling a nice low gear and very relaxed style.
Very comfortable sitting down there in the saddle. You can see the gap is coming down from 52 to 42 seconds. The face of Mark Wouters really tells it all. It's starting to get tough at the front of the bike race at the moment. In the main field behind, they certainly now are starting to calculate that they're coming to the last few strategic points of this year's Tour of Flanders. The next climb on the day will be the Berenderies, and that's where we will see the big attacks coming.
And that takes us into the last 4 climbs of the day, and no one has yet found the answer to a very tenacious bunch in the Tour of Flanders. Unusual list to see this big bunch roam around Flanders at this stage. Andreas Kleier still setting the pace. Smil is in there too. Little bit of a gap forming at the moment, and Van Petegem has slipped down the line a ways.
Well, you can see now the attention being paid to this bike race by Andre Schmil right up at the front there, taking them over the summit. But very shortly they're going to have to pull all of those cars out, because I reckon if we get a nice little look down the road, we'll see the main field. There is Hortensi in the yellow jersey. He's about to get picked up, and that pressure put on the front there by Farm Frites is about to split the field again. But everybody, Phil, just keeps recovering in today's Tour of Flanders and pulling themselves back into the race, still keeping a very big group of riders all compact.
Well, we just saw the green top jersey of Comesso there. He's crossed the gap nicely, and there's a fall way down the pack there. That is a Telecom rider who's gone down, and ouch, he got hit again there. Well, this is a shame, because the Telecom rider who has gone down is indeed Kai Hundertmark, the ex-Motorola man.
Well, Kai Hundermark was sitting at the back of the main field, and this is what happens when everybody's... there's another rider down there and actually looking a little bit injured as well. It looks as if it might actually be Hortensi.
I wonder.
There's a Mercatoni rider. Let's see. Well, I don't think it can be Hortensi, because he's at the front here about to get caught. The crash goes down at the back. There is Kai Hundermark, and I didn't exactly see where the Mercatoni rider went down, but certainly there are 2 bike riders. There is Hundermark, and the Mercatoni Una rider didn't look too happy with that.
Well, that really is unlucky, because that you don't really expect a crash in that situation, and when you don't expect a crash, then of course you're not as alert and you tend to fall much harder.
It seems to me when you do fall on these roads in Belgium, they seem to be a lot harder than they are anywhere else in the world. But that certainly will have smarted. There is the Mercatoni Uno rider trying to get himself back into this bike race, and still not having a major effect on the outcome of the race, because there's an awful lot of bike riders still in here, Phil. I reckon around about 60 in that group, and you have to go back a long time to to when you've seen a group this big in the Tour of Flanders. And thinking back through my memory, the only time I can remember seeing a big group as large as this is actually when René Martens won the Tour of Flanders on a lone breakaway. And again, it was a day when the weather conditions were very similar to this. René Martens, who was riding for the DAF Trucks team at the time, he took off and was never actually pulled back into the fold. Somewhat of a surprise winner, but behind him, the group was so big that the tactics were rather strange.
Well, the peloton being driven on here by the former champion of Holland, Servaes Knaven, and behind him there, the Lamprey content to follow. And they're all wondering just how they're going to sort this out, and I'm not so sure they've got the answers right now.
Well, Lamprey are looking pretty strong and prominent in this group here. The third place rider there was Gabriele Misaglia. In second place, Evgeny Spruk. And it seems now as if the Farm Freak boys have certainly done an awful lot of work, because they're not quite as omnipresent at the front. They're still trying to keep the bike race going along. They're still trying to make it a tough race, and they still have an awful lot of confidence in the performance of Peter van Petegem.
And we've still got 3 riders in the lead too, in Taffy, Wouters and Serpellini, hanging on to what is a very narrow lead now. It's inside 50 seconds as far as we can ascertain, as we head up to the Berend Dries, which is the next climb on the agenda. We're just over a mile away from that.
There's the leader of the World Cup, amazing there in the white jersey. Eric Zabel looking pretty comfortable as well. Now, if these other riders like Museu, Schmiel and Van Petegem don't blow this bike race apart, they're going to have a pretty hard time actually out-sprinting Eric Zabel, because the group is so big now. And let's not forget, Zabel was almost in at the kill last year when he was in the leading group coming up to the Mur de Grammont, involved in that pretty unfortunate accident as they turned onto the cobblestones. He's the kind of bike rider, if they don't start splitting groups off the front, could end up finding himself the victory here at the Tour of Flanders. And a lot of people feel that he does have a chance of winning, especially his own teammate, a former winner of this bike race, Walter Godefroot.
Well, there's 35 to 40 riders still in with a shout here in the Tour of Flanders, inside 20 miles from the finish now, as the leaders begin the climb of Berend Dries. Not a hard climb really like the ones that are about to arrive on, which will be the Mur de Grammont and the Ten Bosch and the Bosberg. They're the 3 still to come. These 3 riders, though, are now hanging on to a very, very tenuous lead indeed. The gap is coming down, and it can't be much longer, Paul, before that little chase group spots them.
Well, they must be almost in sight, but they'll know where they are because of the position of the cars. In third place here is Serpellini. This is a tough little climb, actually. It's a kind of climb, if you've got the power, you can really open up an advantage over the rest of the field. And I reckon we might see 1 or 2 of the favourites like Van Petegem trying to get off the front on this climb, because the group is so big behind. I would expect them to want to try and reduce the numbers in that group just to give themselves more of a chance of winning the bike race, because with 30-35 riders still in that group, it's going to be very precarious when we get to the tactical manoeuvres a little bit later on.
Here we go again, the opening of the ways by the crowd as the 3 leaders who set the pace for some kilometres now continue to drive on as we look down from the helicopter, and it looks like we're pulling back to the chase here. So they are on the same climb now as the Berend Dries, that little compact group of riders, and still Sergei Ivanov to the right of our picture here, and off to his shoulder is Veensteins. Martin Dembacker, on the left is Comesso. These riders here all in with a chance, and I've lost sight for them. Oh, there he is now, Peter van Petegem, just coming out, peeping around the corner of Romans Veensteins.
Well, his team putting an awful lot of responsibility on his shoulders there. They reckon he's number 1 favourite for the bike race today. He's wearing number 1 as last year's winner, and he knows almost every bump of this road. He's a Flanderian himself. He comes from the small town of Brakel, and there's an attack coming here from Spruk. This is a bit of a surprise. The reaction coming pretty rapidly, though, from Ivanov.
And it looks as though he has waited till just near the top to give an acceleration. Ivanov is scurried after him there, but that is Zbigniew Spruk, who finished 5th in this race, about 8 or 9 seconds behind Van Petegem at the end in Meerbecker. And now he's trying to get that sort of a gap over him right now on the climb of the Berend Dries. 3 climbs to come after this, so you've really got to get a new group shaped up here, I think. Otherwise, we could be in for the most unusual occurrence of a bunch sprint.
Well, Ivanov actually started to chase Spruk there, Spruk in the pink and blue jersey of Lamprey, and he wasn't able to follow the pace set by this rider. Now, this is a little bit strange at the moment, because in fact Spruk has got a man in the leading group of 3, so I'm not quite sure why he's leaping out of the field here to try and get across. He's got Serpellini in the front group with Andrea Taffy, and the only thing he can be thinking is that he's got the power to actually leap across that gap, but the gap at the moment is still hovering around the 40-second mark, so it's a big gap to try and ride across on your own.
Well, I'm not too sure whether he wants to even try to ride across on his own right now, or whether the group behind him would like to come back to him. He has had a good start to the season, not quite as good as last year, but he had a high finish in Milan-San Remo. He was third in Milan-San Remo last year. This year he's finished fourth, and so he's got the form, and he wants to have a little shot perhaps at the World Cup, and the World Cup leader Erik Zabel is going to gain with confidence today because he's still in. And remember, he can finish with a good sprint, and he might be thinking here a chance for some World Cup points that normally he wouldn't get.
Well, Andrea Taffy is in this leading group of three, and he doesn't seem to be pedalling quite as urgently as I would expect him in a situation like this. But let's just have a look once again at this attack. There you can see in the blue jersey of Lampre the acceleration coming from Yevgeny Spruk. The reaction almost immediately from Ivanov, but Ivanov wasn't able to hold the wheel, which tells me that at the moment a lot of the Farm Freaks riders have done a lot of work. They don't have the power left now to react to any of the other attacks, so certainly we're going to see a very isolated Peter van Petegem in the last 30 kilometres of this race.
I would have expected somebody like Van Petegem, perhaps even Museo, maybe Schill, to have countered the move as soon as it came here by a man who would be considered a winner of this race, and yet they've allowed him to go, and I'm not too sure whether they're all getting tired and that's the reason they can't break up that chase group, or they're simply not riding with a very clever brain on the shoulders today. But they've allowed Spruk to get clear, and he's off in search of the three leaders.
This is a bit of a strange situation now for Spruk. He was hoping, I think, to get immediately across to that leading group of three, and he's not actually done that. He's found himself caught in no man's land. The last time check we got there was, in fact, he was 30 seconds behind, and he was 42 seconds back to the main field, so he's only opened up a 10-second advantage over the group with all the big favourites. And you can see they're all across the road now. I think he's obviously done the sensible thing, seen that he's not gone with a group of favourites, and he's going to wait for them to catch him up.
Well, they've just passed under the 30 kilometres to go banner there as Camesso now launches an attack, grits his teeth and goes for it. Farm Freaks have decided to try and chase him down. Looks like Servais Canavan again is trying to bridge the gap. He's the policeman. Well, the Farm Freaks boys have worked so hard to try and keep Peter van Petegem fresh and ready for them. And there's Andre Schmill going across, and here comes Erik Zabel now. Oh no, it's not Erik Zabel, no, it's a Fausto Botola rider. I just thought I had the stripes down the side there of the World Cup leader's jersey, but it wasn't quite Zabel's style.
Look at this, you can see Schmill now is starting to be very attentive, looking for the slight move, trying to get himself into a 5 or 6 man split off the front of this group. And his team are working pretty cleverly. We haven't seen an awful lot of the Lotto squad today, but every time you've seen Andre Schmill, he's had a teammate with him, ready to work, ready to pace him off the front to try and find a small breakaway.
Relationship up to the one man out on his own. That's Zbigniew Spruk.
Certainly must sit up now and wait for them, Phil. He will have communication coming from his team manager, because nearly all of these teams now are using a two-way radio system which allows the team manager to let them know just exactly what is happening in the bike race behind. He didn't manage to get across. That would be Theo de Roy shooting across the gap there to go and talk to his man at the front, Mark Wouters, because again we're coming to another climb on the road here, Ten Bosch, which is a very difficult climb. We're coming here into the town of Brakel. There'll be lots of banners out here for our man Peter van Petegem. This is his hometown. He will have ridden this road almost every day after a bike training session. And shortly they'll take this left-hand turn. This is the bottom now of the climb of Ten Bosch, which is why I think Theo de Roy wanted to get up there as quickly as possible and talk to his man Wouters in the front to say, look, this is a very strange bike race today. We've got a situation where you're up the road and there's no major reaction coming from behind, and he may well be thinking now that these three riders have got a chance of surviving to the finish.
It is possible. And in the town here now, they've made that left turn as it's an 11% climb. Not too far, but it's still a toughie. And Mark Wouters looking for some help now. Andrea Taffy, he has that ungainly style, his elbows sticking out, he seems to crawl all over his bicycle, but he certainly does it to great effect. There's the message from Theo de Roy. And drinks are the order of the day, and also a little bit of helpful encouragement, I would think, as well. Serpellini doesn't seem to be doing quite so much in this breakaway. Maybe he's been told that Spruk is trying to reach him.
Well, he actually looks pretty good for a man who's not riding at the front, putting any pressure on. He's always riding a low gear on the climbs, never really looks as if he's in any difficulty at all. But now the gap, 48 seconds, and it looks like Taffy's going for it.
Well, Andrea has put in a very, very typical attack here, but the reaction was easy from the other two. He hardly caused them any pain at all. He's just lifted the speed. Serpellini's surprising me. This man looks as though he's floating just now at the back of these two.
Certainly looks good. A former under-23 world champion, a very good bike rider, a man who rode the Tour de France when he was just 21 years of age. Sitting there, obviously thinking about the team tactics today. Now Peter Van Petegem, this is his climb, he uses it in training. Schmiel is right on his wheel, but Van Petegem is trying to blow them away just like Johan Museeuw has done in the past.
Trying to impress the people who know him so well, and his Schmiel would, I think, expect an attack from the local man, and he's gone straight onto him. Now, this is a big move by Van Petegem here, and if he can get away with a man with the strength of Andre Schmiel, they might have a chance, because remember, there's a number of guys in this bunch who would immediately turn off the teammates of Lotto and, of course, Farm Frieds.
The white jersey there's Johan Museeuw. The big three riders of this bike race have seen the danger. It's amazing to think that Peter Van Petegem is not a very good climber, but when you see him attacking these Mont de Flandre, he really has got the power to explode out. But watch out for that danger man. The fourth man in that group is Roman Weinstein. He's already the winner this year of Tirreno Adriatico. He's a great bike rider.
He is a fabulous bike rider, and he's yet to win a big race, but he's always in amongst it. So let's see what he can do now, because these are four serious contenders now who've come into the front here. And the race winner from last year, the man who finished third last year, Johan Museeuw, is now here. And once they latch on to Sabine-Esbroek, the rider who finished fifth will be in there as well.
Big reaction coming, and now this group looks a very manageable size. I would expect them all to work very well together. It also looks as if, in fact, there is a pink and white jersey in there for Team Telecom. This is Van Dijk, wearing number 221 from the Polman's Ideal team, which is why early on in the bike race we saw Scott Sunderland going out there, making it difficult. 24 kilometers to go to the finish. The next climb of the day will be the toughest. That is the Mur de Grammont. That's where you really have to use the lowest gear of all the gears you will have been using in this race today.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, because the man who loves that climb is Johan Museeuw. He's there, right in the group. And right up here with him too is Stefan Westerman. There's the complete lineup now. Mongin has got in here for the French, and that's him passing through the camera right now. Schmiel and Van Dijk. Well, Van Dijk is the surprise, but he's in there. There's Andre Schmiel, a man of Flanders without a shadow of a doubt. And remember, although he was brought up in Moldavia, he's now a naturalized Belgian.
What a life he's had. In fact, he was born pretty close to Vladivostok in Siberia as well. This group, though, Phil, is actually swelling from the rear. I would have expected a six-man group like that to really have put the hammer down. But all the time this year, we've seen riders coming back from behind, never giving up in this Tour of Flanders, and bringing themselves back up into contention in the bike race. There is the leading group of three. Their advantage hovering still around the 40-second mark. Andrea Taffy now very keen to keep them off the front, to make sure that they can at least go to the Mur de Grammont with an advantage. And Serpellini getting news from behind.
They're probably saying the Strook is trying to reach him, but it's no longer a small group here, because they're throwing in attack after attack. This is now the Poultry Riders who have launched another one.
Rodolfo Brassi. Now the gap really has plummeted. 15 seconds to Brassi, who's trying to get across. And Brassi, in fact, a winner of a race in Belgium called the Lescaut Prize, which was a couple of years ago. He was not a known professional. He took off and led the race for 180 kilometers and never got caught. Wouters looks to be suffering quite a bit now. But the race is certainly going to take a turn for the books. I thought that Taffy was putting the pressure on to try and keep them off the front, because they all realise now that the Mur de Grammont is starting to loom on the horizon. They've got around about 10 kilometres before they get there. And Andre Schmiel himself is starting to get twitchy too. Obviously not too worried about the men in this group. 25 is Wilfred Peters.
Well, you know, that group is coming back to its original composition here. They're just latching on one by one. It's again another attack by the Stars, and they haven't had the power in their legs to break up this very tenacious field. Rejoining again from the back, and as they pull back from the helicopter now, you get some idea of the size of this group, and the riders in the breakaway are assessing once more just what is going on here. A most unusual Tour of Flanders we are watching this time around, as the riders just stay together and they're very tenacious. Still that little breakaway up the road, but the counterattacks, they simply are not succeeding.
Well, that's pretty strange, Phil, as we come now into the town of Parijs. The three leaders are still in front with an advantage of 16 seconds.
And there they are as they hold it together, and there's still no sign of help coming from the back here. Serpellini doing his little bit at the front, looking over his shoulder, and Parijs is where we are now. And that's where we are, Parijs and the great Ronde of Van Vlaanderen, the great Tour of Flanders, as we stay now as our helicopter pans back. I wonder if we're going to see that group coming up. Surely these three can't survive much longer now.
Well, they realise it's almost over for them. They took the chance, and it seems to me that we're not looking at a great Andrea Taffy today. Obviously his form is being tilted a little bit towards next week. Now, André Schmil, Peter van Petegem, Evgeny Spruk, the man who keeps missing out on the moves as well like this, is also the big rider from the Flanders, Johan Museeuw.
Well, Spruk has latched on to the back, which means that he's back in the pack now as well. And it looks as though Van Petegem and Schmil simply can't get together here. There they are again. Here comes the counter-attack, and it's all coming back together once more. And Museeuw, well, he's obviously marking those two riders in front, Schmil and Van Petegem, because they must now be the considered favourites here.
Well, he obviously knows who he wants to watch in the bike race. But look out for Stefan Weserman in the pink and white jersey of Team Telecom there, Phil. He's always very attentive as well. He's always pretty close to the front. He's not doing a lot of work, but he knows just exactly which bike riders and which wheels to follow. That little acceleration has taken this group once again off the front. 5 or 6 riders, and everybody there's Comesso trying to scrabble himself back into the group.
Just 2 hills remaining now, heading up to the Muur de Grammont in Gerardsbergen, and then on to the climb of the Bosberg. Just the 2 little climbs. We're running out of ammunition here to break this field up. Again, you see they split, but slowly but surely the leaders are being hauled back.
And what a big group it is. It's over 30 bike riders in that group behind, Phil. Very strange, and it's going to be a real battle on the Muur de Grammont this afternoon. They're bunching up across the road, but still the attacks are coming thick and fast.
The Farm Fleet's gone out on the attack. Or is it a Vina Calderola? The colours are a bit blurred from the helicopter, but here we are. We're not. They're the 2 climbs which are left to come, the Muur and the Bosberg. A little bit of flat roads now as we approach the beautiful town of Gerardsbergen. Then we'll clatter through its streets and make the turn onto the climb. And surely they're going to have to unleash with every little bit of energy they've got left. Otherwise, we're going to take 30 riders to the finish, and we've got just 22 kilometres to go.
I just cannot see that happening. I can't believe that will happen in the Tour of Flanders, but it's going to be a big group of riders coming into the Muur de Grammont. These 3 at the front, Taffy, Wouters and Serpellini, realise it's almost over, but they're not sitting up and waiting. They're hoping that a small group is going to leap out of that group of riders behind. The Muur de Grammont as well, Phil, over the last couple of years has actually been made a little bit more difficult than it was when in the old days. You used to come around the town and then turn left up the Muur de Grammont. Now the riders come straight into town, through the centre of the town, then up to the top of the climb, and once they reach the old part, they actually take a turn to the right and go round the Capella, which adds on about 600 or 700 metres of cobblestones and of climbing. So when you think it's over, it still goes on.
And Taffy is trying to do what is about a last gasp effort here, and Wouters has marked him. Serpellini a little bit slow to react, but it's coming. And if he looks over his shoulder, he'll find also the race is coming here, because we're just on 20 kilometres to go, and they could all be back together. There's the charge, and it's nearly on now. Interesting move by Taffy to try and keep the pressure on that little bit longer, make them chase, help Museeuw back in the group maybe. But I don't think it's going to happen for much longer. What we're going to have now, Paul, is a group of some 35, 40 riders heading into Gerardsbergen all together.
That's going to be pretty crazy. There's going to be 40 bike riders. Looking down that field, though, it looked as if there were a lot of riders from the Mappé squad in there, so we could still see some attacks coming. Obviously, Mappé were trying to put Taffy out in the front of the bike race to take the pressure off Museeuw. Museeuw has been able to sit in this group today and let everybody else do the work, leaving his team to move across into the breakaway situations. Wilfred Peters is still in this group now. This is a move by André Schmil trying to go off the front.
So Schmil launches an attack. Now surely this will draw the sting of Van Petegem and Museeuw. Well, there's one of them and there's the other, so we're all back together again.
Like Servais Carnarvon coming across there for Farm Friets. These riders very attentive. There is Ekimov as well, still in the group, but it's a big group, Phil. It must be more than 40 bike riders still in with a chance of winning this year's Tour of Flanders.
It all depends now on how they get over the climb of the wall there in Geraardsbergen, because this now, with riders like Ekimov, who's bang on top of his form, having just come off that great win in the week in Belgium in the stage race, he could slip away from this group given the chance. There he is now, watching, waiting, looking to be feeling very, very confident indeed as Wilfred Peters launches an attack, quickly marked out by the Rabobank boys.
This looks like Veerhouten, a man who was earlier on in the breakaway situation. He's still got a few firecrackers left in his legs, but this is the man I really like to watch riding here. Number 25, this is Wilfred Peters. He's a tough bike rider. I always reckon he's just like Sean Yates. He's the kind of bike rider who's never more happy than when he's actually working for somebody else, and that somebody else is usually Tom Steels or Johan Museo. Carnarvon now coming to the front. He realises they've got to keep the pressure on. If their man is going to win this bike race, they can't sit around now, because we're inside 20 kilometres to go to the finish line. This is the road that leads them down into Geraardsbergen, and very shortly they will be in the streets of that city and looking to go up the Muur de Grammont, which is the penultimate climb of the day, and one in the past has been the launch pad. Now Mappé, Phil, are playing the tactical game, because this is Zanini who's coming across now for Mappé. They're wearing number 28, so this may well be a good turn for the books for Mappé. They've launched the group off the front. It's been farm frites all day, and now that we're getting into the final kilometres, the Mappé squad have put 2 men into the leading group.
Well, they're quite amazing, because, you know, when you spoke with Johan Museo at the start, Paul, in the square down at Brugge, he was saying he didn't think his team was as strong this year. They've had a lot of sickness and injury coming up to this race, and yet we've got some of their best names right here in what is now certainly the kill. Museo, as you say, Zanini, Peters and Taffy, and it's looking like a strong team again all of a sudden.
Absolutely. Mario Arts was the Lotto rider trying to get across there, but that's the important thing about having a good strategist for your team manager. They obviously didn't feel as if they were in super condition this year, so what they have done is in fact not try to dominate the race. They've left a lot of the work up to farm frites, and these guys have taken a secondary role in the bike race today, which is why they're still pretty fresh coming down now into the final kilometres. That's Gabriel Misaglia there, the Lamprey rider, another former medalist at the Under-23 World Championships. This is a very good squad of riders. Strangely enough, this year he's riding for Lamprey. Last year he was riding for Mappé, so he'll know exactly what the two bike riders are that are with him. But again, this group is still scrambling back onto the leading group of 5, and we've still got a big group going down into Geraardsbergen.
Well, Veerhouten has been very impressive to get onto the tail of that little breakaway, but it doesn't matter now, because here they all come again. Still a few gaps. Just look at the number of cyclists in that group. There are at least 40 riders down there just now, and they've all come back together. Despite the narrow roads, despite the cobblestones, despite the hills, they've managed to stay as one big bunch, and this is very, very unusual. Now an attack again from farm frites.
This is Servaes Carnarvon on the front, and this is the speed as they come down into the town of Geraardsbergen. Over the bridge, very shortly now they'll be setting themselves up for the penultimate climb of the day, the one that everybody fears, Phil. Today it shouldn't be that difficult really, because the fact is the road condition is dry and they should be able to ride up fairly well, except once you do get to the summit it really is a steep climb.
Yes, but I bet they never thought, Paul, they were going to come down here in a bunch of 40-odd riders, all battling like they were some 5 hours ago for the first sight of a climb. And you can see the riders moving up now towards the front. Farm Fleet keeping the pressure on for Van Petegem. Watch out for Johan Museo. He'll certainly know where this climb starts. He's climbed this hill enough times as a past winner and second in the Tour of Flanders. And there at the front now we have Carnarvon still trying to set the pace for the rest of the team. This is going to be a really terrific launch pad now for the big names, and they've got to attack on this climb.
And one important thing that everybody will have noted, in fact, is that Eric Zabel is still in this group.
Yeah.
On the front, Servaes Carnarvon moving around the outside. It looks like Johan Museo is already very much at the front there.
He's gritting his teeth, and in fact Carnarvon has fought him off, and he wants to hold first position. It's uphill already, no cobbles yet, but very shortly there will be. This is the section of the course where the following vehicles are not allowed to go. They're all on diversion now, and here comes the attack, and we expected it from someone. It had to be Museo.
Well, that's unbelievable. He's leapt out. Nobody's reacted just now. They're going to try and scramble up behind him, but I don't think they expected a vicious attack like that to come from Johan Museo. He hasn't got to the difficult part of the climb yet. He hasn't got to this tough cobble section. That's going to come in a short while. He's just come up through the town square. elsewhere. The reaction now coming from behind. This is Frédéric Guédon who's come to the front. Second position in that group was Peter van Petegem, but this is a pretty impressive gap by Johan Museeuw. If he can get to the summit of this climb, he's got 16 kilometres to go to the finish.
And in that 16 kilometres, of course, the climb of the Bosberg. This is a tremendous effort. Now, this is the corner where they fell off last year. Safely around this time, and Museeuw is leading nicely now. And the crowd are going beside themselves because they're recognising their man, Johan Museeuw, on the front. This is the big return maybe for him now. 20% section of the climb here. The reaction has got to come, but there's Schmil right on the front. Westerman is there. Weinsteins is there. Van Petegem only fourth wheel at the moment. I'm surprised he hasn't reacted.
Well, Van Petegem has had such a good job done for him by his team that he should have the legs. He's hardly been at the front in this bike race, always very close to the front, but he should have been the man to be watching Johan Museeuw. Museeuw caught them napping because I reckon they all expected the attack to come on this first part of the climb. This is a very difficult part of the climb, but the man nailing them back is Stefan Weissermann. He's having a great day.
He's having a great day, and he's a great star of the future, this man, as Stefan Weissermann is bringing the field back together again. Museeuw has made the effort, but he's not firing like he normally fires, and he's taken a double take there to see who's coming. He knows now he's going to be joined. He's going to reassess the situation, and going up there is Van Petegem, but Westerman is going to be the first man to reach Johan Museeuw, and then Weinsteins, possibly Van Petegem and Schmil. We might have an escape group here of the stars.
Well, Museeuw put in a fantastic attack there, but you can see he doesn't have the big explosion of a younger man. Don't forget, Johan Museeuw is 33 years of age. He's one of the elder statesmen nowadays of the sport of professional cycling. He knew when he wanted to go, but certainly just doesn't seem to have that big power to keep it going. But he has got a gap over the rest still. He's been joined there by Westerman. The man leading up the chase now is Weinsteins. Camesso was right in there as well, but still no reaction from Van Petegem.
Well, indicating to me, Paul, that he hasn't got it in his legs today, because this is surely the place. There he goes, but you've got to launch the attack now and reach the leaders. Once you're over the top, it's all of a sudden the gaps open as if by magic.
Everybody's scrambling now. Everyone's just trying to survive over the top of this climb. The photographer's running down. They've got the pictures of the front men, and now they have to run down to the motorbikes to try and get back out onto the course again. Two riders in the front, Stefan Weissermann and Johan Museeuw. Now, Museeuw now will be hoping, Phil, that there's some kind of a tactical manoeuvring going on behind. He's got a telecom rider with him, so he isn't going to get chased by Zabel's team. Zabel has still got one or two guys in that group behind, so that will be advantage. There's a lot of Mapei riders as well in the group, and they're going to slow down the chase behind. Certainly the chase must come from Van Petegem and of course from André Schmil.
And again, it's sort of made an error of the ways of the Farm Fleets boys all day today. They've done a lot of the pacemaking to bridge gaps to leaders when they should be making the attacks themselves, and now they're on the defensive once more. That gap is beginning to open. Museeuw and Westerman might start to feel they are now getting the winning move here.
The gap is not big. Just looking down the road there, you can see there was a group forming behind of 5 or 6 riders trying to keep themselves in contention. This is now over the top of the Mur de Grammont. They'll drop down a little bit. There's a group coming across, 5 riders in that group. One of them is Van Petegem. On the back here is Sprook in the blue and pink jersey. There is the Lotto rider André Schmil. Weinsteins is there in 4th position, so good move by him. This is a dangerous move by Weinsteins because of all these guys in this group at the moment. If they get together at the front, he's got a pretty good sprint.
He's making a real name for himself now in the professional world, and the gap is almost shut down by this little select chase group. In fact, they both looked over and decided it's not worth continuing. They're again looking to see who's coming up. They can see now it's no longer the big bunch now. The heads of this race have got themselves together. Van Petegem, Sprook is coming across, and a big Tristan Hoffmann who's gone through as well. So this is an interesting break now. So Museeuw and Westerman are going to have to kick in here. 14 kilometres to go. This might be the move.
Well, Museeuw must be pretty happy with that. We started at the bottom of the Mur de Grammont with 40 bike riders all together. Another group trying to come across here. This is Chris Peers, the rider from Cofidis. In that group, one of the riders from Passo Bortolo, Christophe Mangin is in there, and Frédéric Guédon as well. Guédon wearing 131 there, a former winner of Paris-Roubaix, somewhat a surprise winner, but this year seems to be returning to the form that he had a couple of years ago. And tucked on the back there wearing number 105 for the Lamprey squad, is still Marco Serpellini. Good ride by him.
That Bortolo rider, by the way, is Konishev, and we haven't seen much of him, but he's been sat in that pack all of the time and is now bridging up to this lead group.
Once again, this bike race is a very strange Tour of Flanders. You know, that looked to me like a superb move. Museo and Weserman being joined by the other favourites, Van Petegem and Schmiel. That should have been the move that would make the match. And in fact, what's happening is, once again, we're getting a return of bike riders from the rear of the race, showing me today that this hasn't been one of the toughest Tour of Flanders, and it's certainly going to be a tough one to win, because still there's a lot more room for tactical manoeuvres.
Well, there's 12 riders now got themselves free of that bunch of some 40, and 12 riders have come together, and really, looking down the list of names here, these are the men we would expect to be at the head of the race. Van Petegem, last year's winner. And also up here, Museo, who has done so well in this race over the years, as he reminded us at the start. And Weinstein's also tagging onto the back. I think, you know, this is going to swell back to about 20 riders.
Well, just looking back down the road there, you could see another group of riders trying to scuttle across and get themselves into this leading group. Stefan Weserman riding sensibly. Although he's in great form today, he knows that his own teammate Eric Zabel is not too far behind. And if this big group stays clear, he obviously favours Zabel. Piers now for Cofidis, trying to get across and open up a smart move. The next climb of the day, as you can see the banner there indicating, in fact the last climb of the day is the Bosberg, the 16th climb of all, and that will be just 10 kilometers to go over the summit of this climb. And this is a good move, and it could end up being a very tactical finish here to this bike race.
Well, unlike the others, the Bosberg is really on a nice wide highway almost. But because of its strategic location on the course, it's very often proved the springboard to success. And surely this would be the place now, if Van Petegem is feeling good, where he will try to rip clear. And I must say, Paul, that Piers for Cofidis had a great race today.
Well, it's been a bit of a strange race for the riders from Cofidis. Normally they would have expected to be working for Frank van der Broeke, who's not on the start line this morning. And so sometimes that really affects a team. They're a team kind of without a head, and these guys are not guys who are normally used to racing to win. They're normally used to racing for another teammate, for a leader. And so that's why they've been present at the front all the time, because they were ready for Van der Broeke to be here and competitive.
And still look down the road there. The riders are coming back as we start the climb of the Bosberg here. If they're looking back down the road, they're latching on again. We are swelling back to at least 30 riders in this bunch. Absolutely amazing. Van Petegem has got himself near the front now, as Comesso, I think it is, pushes the pace. They are going, no, it's Weinstein who pushes the pace. Museo's second wheel, Weserman is there off to the right as well. And Van Petegem, I thought, was poised to attack just then, but he's dropped back into the group.
Well, Van Petegem is there in about 5th place. Weinstein's very strong. This man is regarded more as a sprinter. He's decided he's going to keep the pressure on. Andre Schmiel was going to get out of the saddle there to try and launch an attack, but decided, I think I'll stay here on the wheel of Weinstein's. Museo, I don't think, can attack again, because he put in his major move there on the Mur de Grammont, so he's going to just try and stay in the group. Weinstein's is the man on the front at the moment. Andre Schmiel coming up alongside him for a second time, just to see if he can try and split this group once more.
Well, Weinstein's absolutely brilliant, but now we've got Andre Schmiel on the front. Another man for the classics as he tries to rip clear.
In fact, they're going clear, Schmiel and Museo. Museo has marked this man perfectly. Museo and Andre Schmiel going clear over the top. The reaction now coming from Peter Van Petegem in 3rd place in the grey jersey there. But what a move by Schmiel. This may well be the move of the match. The two big leaders, Andre Schmiel and Johan Museo, off the front. But still, it seems to be looking as if it's going to come back together. They're scuttling across there. They're trying to bring themselves back into the bike race, and that attack has not made a difference.
Well, it's become very obvious that Johan Museo's only had 2 numbers on his handlebars today, that of Van Petegem and the other of Andre Schmiel. They were the men he's quite clearly thought are going to do the big number. There's Tristan Hoffmann flashing through again now, as once more riders are bridging the gap at a tremendous rate, and Zbigniew Spruk comes on as well.
Spruk really powering across the gap there. Weinstein's looking very dangerous to me. The way he rode there on the Bosberg shows that he's got great form at the moment. And looking back down the road, we get a chance to see that this time they certainly have opened up a pretty smart gap. And I wonder, because of all the teams who are represented in the front here, who is actually going to chase down. This must now, Phil, it has to be the definitive move of the Tour of Flanders. The winner, I would say, has to come from this group.
Well, our camera boys are getting mixed up here as the riders chase for wheels here. It's Smil stirring up the trouble at the front, and Roman Weinsteins. Zbigniew Sprukov to our left. Johan Museeuw scampers through. Somebody open the door again.
Somebody's gone off the front there, just to the left-hand side. There's a rider just off the front, and they're not actually chasing him down at the moment. They're accelerating. There's no organised chase. And in fact, it's Smil. Smil is the man who's gone off the front. He took them all by surprise. They were all watching each other, and he's actually got himself a 40-50 metre advantage.
Museeuw, who's marked him all day, spotted that because he came from last man quickly up the outside on the left of our camera. But when he got up there, he found that this man had gone. The gap was there, and he sat up and has left somebody else to chase. And Smil has gone. He's hit him at the right moment. I wonder if he waited till Museeuw was at the back of the group.
Probably knows that Museeuw has been like his shadow today, and that's why when a man like Andre Smil attacks, you really have to be right on the wheel, because if he gets an advantage of 40 or 50 yards, it's very difficult to nail him back. They're going to have to organise themselves now. Smil is taking a big risk here because there's still around about 10 kilometres to go down to the finish line, and it's going to be very hard to stay clear on your own, because that group behind is a very big group with riders like Van Petegem and Museeuw in there. Although I don't think Museeuw will do too much to contribute to the work here, because he's already put in his big attack on the Muur de Grammel, and he will wait. Let's just have a look again to see if we can spot the moment when Andre Smil had gone out of the group. He's already up and around the corner there, so he caught everybody napping.
And they spent so much time preoccupying themselves with each other that nobody reacted to this attack by Andre Smil. He is an opportunist, he wins his bike races this way, and he's particularly good towards the end of classic races. He was, by the way, the last national champion of the old Soviet Union before they sort of dissolved into various countries in the Eastern Europe area. Now, he's gone, and if they're going to work hard, they're going to have to get themselves together as we look down now at a general reorganisation. That's the attack of Smil, as the race behind did not react to it at all.
Certainly not quick enough. He was just always riding at the front, and he didn't really, it looked to me as if he didn't really attack there. He rode off the front, and there was a split in the group behind, and the next man in the line didn't have the power just to keep going. Now this is the group getting themselves organised, and let's see if Johan Museeuw wearing 23 there is going to work. He's had a hard time. He actually attacked over the Muur de Grammel, but there's now a very consistent group of 6 riders there, so Smil, I think, is going to have to dig very deep if he's hoping to stay off the front. But he's actually opened up in that big armada of motorbikes there. You can just see one little figure, and that is Andre Smil in the red and black jersey of Lotto. He has opened up the gap. I reckon it's around about 15 seconds.
Well, that's a start. Well, he's on his own now, and it's all down to any speed left in those legs after what has been a very tactical and quite a tough Tour of Flanders for these riders at the front. But remember that Andre Smil, he holds the record, and there it is. For when he won that Paris Tours in 1997, it was the fastest average speed in the history of classic racing, and it still stands now. And Andre Smil is one man against the rest now, and not just the rest, but the stars of this race are finally free of the majority of the pack, and they've got to work out together how they're going to chase Andre Smil down.
Well, just now they're not chasing him down at all. They're all over the road.
Van
Petegem is looking for some help to come from Frédéric Guédon, who's in that group. In fact, it's not Guédon, that's Frankie Hoy, I think, who's got into the group for the Française des Jeux. Spruk, the sprinter, is not going to do too much either, because he's going to sit back and hope that the group comes back to Andre Smil at the front and save himself a little bit for the sprint in the final. But looking at Smil there, Phil, he doesn't look all that comfortable, and they're not going to get any help from a man in pink and white either, Stefan Weserman, because in the group behind, Eric Zabel is still there. So Weserman will sit back and say, well, you know, I'm quite happy here, because if we get back up to the front with Smil, I've got a chance in the sprint, and if we don't, well, then Eric Zabel has got a chance of catching up from the rear, and he's increased his advantage from 15 to 18 seconds.
Well, last year Andre Smil won Milan-San Remo, went on to win the World Cup. This year, of course, it's been on the shoulders of Eric Zabel, who won Milan-San Remo. And he hasn't ridden an aggressive race, has he, Paul? We haven't seen him at the front of the bunch. He's not gone with any of the splits. And as you say, he's tucked in that group. And if he can get back up here and use his sprint, there's no more hills now, he could well take second place, if not the win.
Absolutely. That's why there was a little discussion at the back there between Johan Museeuw and Stefan Weserman. And Weserman, I'm pretty sure, will have said, well, look, sorry, this is a tactical bike race. I've got Zabel behind. I'm not going to come through. It's up to you guys. If you want to catch Smil, fine, but I'm staying put.
It's only 7 kilometres to go. 4.5 miles. That was Tristan Hoffmann going through. This is Weinsteins. Here comes Johan Museeuw, must be kicking himself now, and a lot of aggravation being come from the other riders now because Hoffman is getting very tired here. And Westerman looks over to see if anybody's coming to play from the back group. We don't quite know where that back group is at the moment. We've got no relationships with it at all.
Well, Museeuw's looking pretty strong here. He's actually pretty verbal as well, trying to get everybody to come through to the front. 1-1-1 is Roman Weinstein's. Now it looks as if Stefan Westerman has decided to come through to the front. This is Hoffman himself. Done a lot of work in this bike race this afternoon. There is Frankie Hoy, former rider on the US Postal Service, now riding for Française des Jeux. Look at this. This is the group behind.
Well, they're right there. They're right there, so they're all back together again, except they won't know that Andre Schmill is up the road, and I wonder if the others will tell them.
This is a strange Tour of Flanders, I have to say. Very weird. That is a very big group there. In fact, I thought it was only 5 or 10 riders getting on, but it looks, in fact, as if there's about 30. This is, I think, Wilfred Peters coming to the front, trying to stir them up. Chris Pears there for Cofidis. They now are going to get a serious organisation with this kind of speed. I think they may well be able to nail back the lone leader at the moment, Andre Schmill, who last time we had a check fill, it was 18 seconds, 5 kilometres to go.
5 kilometres to go. Well, certainly Peters knows this man is away, because I think Museeuw must have said, see if you can go and get him. And Peters, ever the brilliant workhorse he is, remember, in his own right, he's finished 2nd and 3rd in Paris-Roubaix. That's a week away now, and he's now trying to chase this one down for perhaps Johan. There are 2 chasers now. Westerman under the banner of 5 kilometres to go, and there'll be no help from the Lotto rider there. Paul, did you catch who it was?
I didn't catch it. It probably is going to be one of the riders like Thierry Maréchal who's got up there, but he will just sit there. There's only one rider, and I wonder if Eric Zabel is still in that group. We haven't managed to see him, but the fact that Westerman is on the front like this, really hammering, makes me think that Zabel must be in this group. 4 kilometres is the next banner that Andre Schmill is. Don't look back, Andre, because they're breathing down on you. You've got to keep looking forward, got to keep riding. The Lotto rider there trying to wave the motorbike camera away because he feels that that's assisting the chase of Stefan Westerman here a little bit. It is coming down, 16 seconds now.
Yes, I think he's very concerned here that our camera motorbike is actually drawing the riders forward. There you can see the motorbike. He has moved clear of the field now. Always a difficult thing to judge, of course, because we want to see the pictures. The riders don't want to see the slipstream of that man. And very unfair it would be too if the bunch came up on the slipstream of a motorcycle to bring back an attack like this. They've got to do it all by themselves. It's a superb escape. It is 100% committal now with 4 kilometres to go. If he gets caught, forget it, he'll get tailed out. He's got to either win or get nothing, and Andre Schmill knows that. After all, he's won some of the world's best classics.
He certainly has, but this is a real risk going off the front like this, and you know his time is still coming down, 14 seconds with 4 kilometres to go. Wilfred Peters moving to the front. There's a lot of Mapei riders in this group. Wilfred Peters is not the only one. Stefano Zanini is in here as well, and Johan Museeuw. Well, if it does come back together at the end, Phil, I don't think Johan Museeuw has got the sprint that he had when he started off his career, but they obviously are trying to chase that man down. There's the lone leader, and there is the group. They're right on him.
Yeah, right on him, and it's all flat running now until we swing up towards the finish in Meerbecker. Then it's a slight uphill ride, and they could jump on him there, you know, but it's only 3 kilometres to go. We've been in the saddle now for 6 3/4 hours today in what has been superb weather conditions for the Tour of Flanders, and the race running on an average speed of 25 miles an hour. And Andre Schmill now time trialling at around 48 kilometres an hour. As the kilometres tick off, he just keeps putting his head down and suffering and hoping, and they're under the same banner now. This is a real drive. Stefan Westerman today has shown us he's going to be a fantastic professional.
Absolutely. That's around about 10 seconds I make it. Wilfred Peters moving forward now. The rider from Lotto there just in second position, in fact, is being very, very careful not to encourage these riders at all. In fact, that Lotto rider who is on the front there is Mario Arts, and he's just going to sit there and try and make sure that the chase behind is not organised. There is the lone leader. It's a very lonely road. His next banner will be the banner saying 2 kilometres to go. He's got to suffer. He's digging deep. He's got to give everything he can now. Every bone in his body will be aching now, every muscle, as he looks under there just to see if he can catch a shadow of those riders behind.
Well, he's been around a long time, and he's won Milan-San Remo and Paris-Roubaix. He's now a naturalised Belgian, and I've just realised, Paul, if he wins this race, I think he's won 3 major classics, the 3 major classics, all for a different country.
That's pretty impressive. That's been pretty strange over the last few years since the breakdown of the Iron Curtain. These riders have been changing from country to country, and it's sometimes very difficult really to keep a handle on it. Stefan Weserman, though, knows what his job is at the front as they go under the banner, showing them 2 kilometers left to go. They're all, in fact, not really eating completely into the lead of Andre Schmil, and I don't know how he's holding on.
Well, they're not getting themselves together because we're getting to that psychological point where they'll look at each other and say, well, you chase him. And they'll say, no, you chase him, and he'll hold that gap. I think he might escape to the finish here, as Weserman is doing a major amount of work, which indicates to me that Zabel is in this group, and Weserman is sacrificing a high finish for Eric here in the sprint.
Well, now there's got another team. This is an organised chase now. This should really be able to nail back Andre Schmil. There are about 4 Rabobank riders moving to the front there. One of them was Martin Den Bakker, the national champion of Holland. They're now dropping into the town of Meerbeek. Shortly they will take a right-hand turn, which in fact this man at the front here, Andre Schmil, has already taken. This is the sign that shows him he's got 1,000 metres to go. This is a long straight. At the end of it, he's got a right-hand turn, and it's a long drag up to the finish line in Meerbeek here. It must seem interminable for this man. He still keeps looking over his shoulder, and he's still holding on to a 10-second advantage.
He's just going to hold his rhythm. He's gambling now on the riders behind, not making. This is Ekimov gone. Ekimov has gone. He's going to try and cross the gap. The former world pursuit champion. This is the move, and he's got. If anybody's got the speed, it is Vyacheslav Ekimov. He is flying over that gap. He's the head, or just passing that motorbike now. Somebody's coming up to him.
Well, it looked as if it was a Seiko rider coming across him now. This is amazing. This is almost one Russian changing a Russian. This is the right-hand turn into the finishing straight now. The finish was right up at the top of the picture there. It is such a long finishing straight, Phil. He's got to dig deep, and he mustn't look over his shoulder anymore, because I'm sure very shortly we'll see the shape of Vyacheslav Ekimov breathing down upon him.
Well, this is a long ride, gently uphill here. There are the pack snapping at his wheels now, almost 7 hours in the saddle. And this man, who is now a Belgian, can call this one a home victory, because I don't think they're going to latch on to him now. He's coming up the barriers. He can't see who's behind him. It looks like a Seiko rider. Could well be Dario Pieri there, who's coming up behind him. That's a fair result for him as they come up to the line. Andre Schmil gets the win. Pieri just about holds on for second place. What a result for him. But there's no doubt about the winner today, the man of the Tour of Flanders. He's never won this race. He's now got the big 3, Milan-San Remo, Paris-Roubaix and the Tour of Flanders. And that was a well-taken and superb victory.
Absolutely perfectly timed. That was a big risk to do what he did, Phil, because that was a huge group behind. Pieri really saddened there by the fact that he thought he'd come away with a great victory. This man is a young professional. He timed it almost to perfection, but he didn't have quite what it took to get across to Andre Schmil, at 37 years of age, the winner of the Tour of Flanders.
Well, there's the scrabble. There's the man in tears, Dario Pieri, the best ride of his life, just being pipped on the line with that late escape. But this man, well, he chose his moment, he took it, and what a long sweat it was to hold off to the finish. I reckon he went about 11 kilometres from the line, and then he daren't really look over his shoulder. This will go down, I think, as his finest victory, and he's had some good ones over a long career. From the day he won the Russian National Championship, he's now the winner of the Tour of Flanders. And what a big sprint behind. What a strange race this has been. There is the official result. Weinstein's got 3rd, Zabel got 4th, and that will keep him well in the lead in the World Cup competition. And Hoffman there in 5th place. Superb result for some riders today.
Peter, it's always difficult when you're one of the big favourites to try and win a race, and you were very marked today.
Yeah, it's it is always difficult. My team did a good job today, really good, and I tried a few times the last 30 kilometers to make the race very hard, but it was not so. The weather was very good, and the wind was always in the head, so it was difficult to go with a small group because everybody look each other, and after the Muur we were with a good group. On the feet of the Bosberg we were also with a few riders, and then on the top of the Bosberg there was an attack from Schmil and Museeuw. I come back, and then we look each other, and everybody come back, and then was I attacked first, but Hofman came back, and then Schmil was very hard.
It was a great move by Schmil because nobody really was able to react behind.
Yeah, the moment he gone, everybody was all thinking because there was Feinstein, Zabel was there, and then when you couldn't, the way he do that, it's magnifique. And also the last 10, the last 3 kilometers, I was thinking, they're gonna catch him directly, but chapeau.
Thanks.
Okay.
Cedric, it's a new year for you, a new team. And the team actually rode pretty well out there today looking after Ekimov, but he was unfortunate to have a bad crash.
Yeah, I had to give my back wheel to Ekimov after the Kluisbergen today. And this little trouble because, you know, in a race like Flanders, you have to be a little bit lucky and to have no problem like that because you are using a lot of power and energy to come back. So I knew that Eki had an attack at the last kilometer, and perhaps if he hadn't had that problem, we never know what could happen. But that is a little bit a problem, but the team is okay. We saw that in the 3 days of the Pan a couple of days ago, and I think for the next World Cup like Paris-Roubaix, normally we should be a good team and hope to win one of them.
It's a big change for you this year because you're riding the US Postal Service team. The year will be a long one because you'll be expected to ride a very good Tour de France with Lance Armstrong.
Yeah, for sure. This is the objective number one of the team for this year is to win the Tour again, and so I'm working again. But you know, I'm here in the classics just to help a little bit Eki and Incapi, and I'm giving the maximum during the next July. So I keep a little power for that moment.
And how are you enjoying the early season with the US Postal Service?
It was great, except the weather when we had the training camp. It was raining for 10 days. I think we spent 12 days in Heavily Beach, and it was raining for 10 days. So that's the words. the bad thing of the training camp, but everything instead of the weather was super.
Good. We look forward to talking to you a lot more this year.
Okay, thank you.
Merci.
So the name of Andre Schmil now joins the greats as winner of the Tour of Flanders, and the Belgians can go home happy because, of course, he is now a Belgian national. You know, there must have been times he thought he would never win this event. He's had 3/3, a 4th and a 6th. Well, now he's on the top, and he was best of what was a great day out here in Belgium. Until the next time, for Paul Sherwen, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.